evening, everyone. The time is 5:42. Before I would call the meeting to order, I would like to note 3 announcements. First, Harrisburg City Council hosted an executive session prior to our work session meeting this evening to discuss legal matters. Next, Councilman Majors is excused for this evening. And my third announcement was we will begin this evening with the Budget and Finance Committee. So we're going a little out of order in our agenda due to the mayor's schedule to accommodate her schedule this evening. So it is 5:43. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Parker, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Mattson.
Here.
Mr. Majors. Ms. Rawls.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
And Ms. Bowers.
Present, thank you. As I mentioned, we will begin with the Budget and Finance Committee, which will be Chair Vice President Green.
Thank you, President Bowers. We will be starting with Bill number 7. Mr. Parker, would you read that into record, please? And then if there's someone from the administration to go over this, if you can come up now.
Bill 7, 2022. An ordinance appropriating Initial American Rescue Plan Act funding from the United States Department of Treasury and authorizing certain expenditure of such funds.
Thank you. Mayor, if you would like to start your presentation, please, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Vice President Green.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. How are you doing this evening? I'm here tonight to share with City Council my administration's plan on how to spend American Rescue Plan funds afforded to us by the federal government. I will go line by line, explaining how we plan to spend the money, more than $47 million awarded to the city, and why we made those decisions. It's not every day you get $47 million, and the focus of these plans are to push the city forward, rather than focus on playing catch up on events which have already happened. Afterwards, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. First, a little background on how we got here. As you all know, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act on March 11, 2021. Municipalities and states across the country were given specific instructions to use funds on areas impacted directly by the COVID-19 pandemic. The city of Harrisburg received $40,773,625. The first half of which was received last May, the second half coming any day now. In February, we held 4 citywide town hall discussions to learn what city residents needed and wanted as the pandemic continues to impact the city. We announced our proposal on how to use funds last month, and we are here today to answer questions about those appropriations. So what's in the proposal in front of you today? We want to use about 42.5 of the $47 million allotted to the city. The remaining 4.5 will go towards what essentially amounts to a rainy day fund for unexpected expenses and future programming. We want to spend $14.5 million on who we designated are people in need, seniors, small business owners, and low-income residents. $10 million will go towards beautifying the city through parks and recreation. And a little more than $9 million will go towards public safety. We've already put $8.8 million towards lost revenue, which we've already accounted for and passed in this year's budget. At the center of the $14.5 million going towards Harrisburg residents in need is an $8 million affordable housing program proposal. This has been one of my top initiatives since taking office. Every family deserves to have a safe home that they can call their own. And if we can partner with nonprofits and developers to match funds, we hope we can build hundreds of new homes. We also know the pandemic may have impacted family income and the inability to pay for needed home repairs. We want to set aside $5 million to go towards families who need upwards of $10,000 in home repairs. In addition, we hope to help low-income and senior citizens, residents who may have fallen behind on their trash bills. We think $1 million will help cover delinquent bills from March 2020 through March 2022. And we know so much has been made over the last 2 years of the struggle of our small businesses. They are the backbone of our city. We want to give small businesses the boost they need to arrive, if not thrive. Once this proposal is approved, I will task our Department of Building and Housing Development with ground rules for small business owners to apply for $10,000 grants. Now moving to the $10 million set aside for Parks and Recreation. At the center of it is replacing the Hall Manor pool area with a state-of-the-art splash pad and water park. The cost of maintaining the Hall Manor pool is simply too cumbersome. It's leading to residents dealing with flooded homes. Further, we cannot safely staff the Hall Manor pool due to a lifeguard shortage. We feel a new water recreational facility will fix all those problems. This proposal will have a spray area, a lazy river, small slides, and ramp entry point for those with disabilities. There will also be a community space for families. Not only will this benefit local residents, but we want this to be a state-of-the-art destination for people all across the region. In addition, we want to upgrade all current playground equipment in the city to address the ADA accessibility and continue the work we started in March and April in removing dead and dying invasive trees with new ones to help beautify our neighbors. When it comes to public safety, our police officers and firefighters are working in a building now which is desperate need of a new heating and cooling system. The HVAC unit there is outdated, and if not for the bubblegum and duct tape work of Director Dave Baker, the system would be in total failure. A new HVAC unit would cost more than $5 million. It's a pricey but necessary expenditure, as well as a health risk. In addition, if we want to make Harrisburg a safer city, we need to clean up homes that are run down and abandoned. We have identified at least 42 homes that we can demolish with these funds, plus more from matching grants. The work our officers and firefighters have done over the past 2 years is beyond commendable. They deserve a raise, and we're working on that. But in the meantime, they deserve something for their hard work on the front lines since the start of the pandemic. That's why I feel it overwhelmingly necessary to give each person a $5,000 bonus. This isn't only for them, it's for their families, wives, husbands, and children who sacrificed just like their loved ones did while protecting us during this COVID process. Lastly, our fire department continues to be the regional leader for other fire companies. Oftentimes, they arrive first on the scene of fires outside of the city. And I can attest to that because I've been at quite a few fire scenes in the last couple of months. Their response time is faster than it's ever been. And they're doing all this with outdated radio systems that do not work countywide. It needs an upgrade, and we intend on giving them one. So, council members, in conclusion, we plan to spend a little more than $42 million of the $47 we received in American Rescue Plan funds. $33.6 million will go towards funding programs and other expenses. Nearly $9 million is to replace lost revenue. And a little more than $4.5 million will be left over to deal with any additional expenditures which come up. And we have to earmark that by the end of 2024. At this point, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I have a few questions, but I'm going to open up to my council members first to see if they have any questions. So I will start with my far right with Councilman Rouse.
Thank you, Vice President Green, and good evening, everybody, Mayor, administration, guests, and anybody who's watching on Zoom. I had one question, which was for the small business grants. Is there going to be any accountability or any procedure set up to make sure that they use the money as designated if they do receive the $10,000 grants? And what would those accountability procedures be?
Let me be very honest with you.
Mhm.
Our Director of Economic Development and Director of Building and Housing will be responsible for allocating those fundings. But at this point, I am looking towards utilizing another company to assist her. At the present time, I think we use Civitas, who has done an amazing job with helping our federal funding. And so we will be utilizing them as well. She has indicated that she has the technology as well as the skill base to be able to do this.
Thank you. That was it for me. Thank you, Vice President Green.
Thank you, Councilman Mattson.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. The low income guidelines, will those be based off HUD's definitions?
250% the 2022 Health and Human Service Department poverty rate below.
Okay, just in layman's terms, essentially, what is the cap of that person's income? Say,
It will depend on how many people are in the household,
sure,
but it's for one person, if I'm correct, it's 30-some thousand.
30 some? Okay, and below. Okay.
And keep in mind, I just spoke with Brian Hudson, who used to work for Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, is that there's new guidelines.
Okay.
Guidelines that support the Harrisburg area and not the Dauphin County area.
Okay, good. Look forward to getting some more information as we move forward. I kind of missed it in the, well, I guess it's here with demolition versus rehabilitation. Sometimes I feel like, I know some of these homes are too far gone, but I get a little sad because that's part of our history, that's part of our story, and that's gone. Like when I think of the Jackson House, for example, if we could have saved that, I think it could have been a beautiful building, or the other building that was on market that it's not the Lieutenant Governor's mansion. I thought that's what it was, but I guess a Lieutenant Governor lived in it at one point in time, but it was still a very beautiful home. And that recently got demoed. Can you just walk us through, do you think we can save some of these homes that are going to be demolished, or are they too far gone? Or how did you reach the conclusion as to what to demo and what to rehab?
Just a minute. Nate, Mr. Spriggs, would you come up, please? Talk about that.
And while Nate's working his way up. So the 100% level for the poverty rate is 13,590, which 250% that is total level. 33,975 for a one person household, and then it goes up.
Okay.
On reference to what needs to be demoed and what's a rehab, that's actually a codes question. They actually determine that, and they provide a list. And then I actually have my demolition, demolish what needs to be demoed based on the condition of the property. So that's actually more a codes question.
But let me just say that we've been talking to Ms. Montgomery. We've already designated these houses a long time ago. These are houses that's been sitting for the last 10 or 15 years. They're sitting there. The problem that we're having right now, to date, as a matter of fact, as recently as Saturday, is we have squanders. And we have squanders in this property, and they're causing a lot of damage to these different properties and also starting fires. So these are the ones that we designated as necessary to be taken down.
Okay. Understood.
And Mr. Matson, just procedurally, what's in front of you tonight in the bill is about 13.6 million of that money. So those full details of the mayor's presentation will come back in a separate ordinance for the fall, which will have you'll have a chance, the council, to go through those in detail with the departments at that time.
Okay.
You'll
Yeah.
be aware of what houses we're going to determine to take down.
And then in just real quick, one last one in regards to the trees, are we going to replace them with a new kind of tree, or are we just sort of just going to leave trees not replaced?
Mr. Baker will answer that for you.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so in regards to the trees, it's always the city's goal to replace any invasive or dangerous species trees with more appropriate size trees for the location. So we really do leave that up to the homeowner. If it's in front of a house, we give them the option, and we do tree planting with volunteers on a regular basis throughout the city. So for the most part, if someone is open to having a tree plant in front of their house, especially if their neighbors are applicable to doing the same as well, we'll bring a group of people in and we will plant trees for no cost to the resident in that area.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think trees, it's a conflicting thing. We were just talking about it with the mayor the other day, is I feel like they beautify the neighborhood, but at the same time, they can be a nuisance when they dig up the sidewalks and make it less ADA accessible. And obviously, with a median income of $33,000 a year, a $3,000 expense to take down a tree is a major burden for a lot of our residents. So, but that concludes my questions for now. Thank you.
And then on that note too, Mr. Councilman Matson, please understand that majority of the trees that we have in the city of Harrisburg are over 100 years. The problem that I'm having now is that residents are calling. There's been several residents who have fell on sidewalks. The trees are uprooting the sidewalks and they're going uphill, and our residents are falling.
Yeah.
So instead of receiving a litigation case against a resident from the city of Harrisburg, we need to address the trees.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Madsen. President Bowers.
Thank you, Vice President Green. Good evening, Mayor Williams. Thank you for your presence tonight and presentation. I do have a few questions, but it seems like they may be more appropriate for the fall discussion where your other directors will be present. Specifically, I have questions related to codes for Ms. Director Montgomery relative to the number of properties that are currently on the demolition list, because in previous years, I know it seemed as if the demolition list was growing and the number of demolitions that occurred annually seemed to be decreasing. So I just wanted to note what the proposal or how the proposal would impact that list. And then a follow-up to that would be, what is the criteria for demolition? The previous codes administrator director, I could never get a clear understanding of what qualified home or other property for demolition. So I wondered if Ms. Montgomery has a clear metric for demolition. I think it would be helpful for everyone's reference. And then you referenced new HUD guidelines. I think it would be helpful if we saw if it's a new chart. I know that's what we previously referenced. I'm happy to note that the city of Harrisburg is included rather than the larger Dauphin County number. We know that that's often confusing for developers that are coming into the city. So it's nice to know that the city proper is included. So that's all I have for now, but I'll reserve further questions for later. I also have questions related to the small business grants program and the administration of that initiative.
Thank you, President Bowers. I'll go to Councilman Rodriguez, and then I'll come back to Councilman Gaines.
Thank you, Chair Green. Madam Mayor, thank you for being here this evening with your administration team. I read the RCA recommendations. It looked pretty well. looked awesome. I just wanted to know, were you intending on taking their suggestions as far as putting emphasis on codes related to health, safety, and welfare, as well as the aging furnaces in the homes, especially in senior citizens' houses that really couldn't get to it and do the work themselves?
And that's the reason that we put money into the ARPA funding for senior citizens. Since I started my administration January 3rd, I've been inundated with calls. I had a senior citizen who did not have a furnace for 4 years.
Mm.
She had no plumbing. She was taking water from the kitchen to the bathroom to flush her toilets. We also had 2 other senior citizens who did not have plumbing, roofing was leaking, as well as no furnace. The other ones had windows that were back in 1930, I guess, because you could just, the little stilt that you didn't even
Right.
have the closure, she couldn't lock it. The other, she had doors that had no locks on it.
Wow.
Couldn't lock it because they were broke. Air repair, rear replacement. So just 3 of the cases that we've had in the last 6 months, and there's more, but I don't want to go through them all. But senior citizens are crying out for help and asking, can we provide that services? We have porches that are falling down, backyard porches that their steps are going. We have side of their housing that has been blown off by the wind. So there's a tremendous amount of things that the residents who are senior citizens and do not have the funding. And we find that they're on, they only have $1,200 as a revenue resource coming into the home. As far as the other senior citizen had cancer, husband has cancer. So we asked the firefighters to please bring him out from the bedroom downstairs because there was no heat in that home as well. So there's so many incidents where senior citizens need the help of the city. And this is one of the things that we wanted to do to help our residents who have been taxpayers for the last 30 or 40 years. We need to give back to the city of Harrisburg.
Absolutely. Thank you. And speaking of the senior population from public safety, I've noticed, and I've taken a lot of calls and emails about, it's great that we are redeveloping a lot in the city and just reinvigorating our parks and green spaces, which is beautiful. But I think sometimes we do kind of leave out the senior population or take the things they enjoyed out, like their horseshoe games and just the basics that we might overlook. What about places like the Medical Center that tend to the seniors? Are they on the purview as far as the senior allocations noted in the ARPA funding?
No, they're not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Was there any specific reason why?
They're because they're private. Most of them are private.
Gotcha.
They're
Okay.
not 501c3.
Okay.
Nonprofits.
Okay.
Because even if they were 501c3s, they could come under community development block grant funding.
Absolutely. And then for the demolitions, as we had mentioned, and the road work, were there any intentions of perhaps sending reallocations that way so we can, to President Bauer's point, kind of keep up with the demos?
Well, that's what I just mentioned in prior,
Mhm.
my beginning of the funding, is that we are going to concentrate on doing the demolitions.
Anything for
we
the
were
road?
we were told that there were 42 demolitions to date, but we're going to look to make sure that that's exactly accurate.
Okay.
The problem is that, a lot of these homes have been vacant and they have owners out of New Jersey, Canada, New York, and the landlords are not taking care of these properties. So they're deteriorating.
Mhm.
So they're left to the city to take down.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we no longer can do that. As I had stated before, we have a lot of individuals who are squanders,
Mhm.
a lot of who are homeless. So that's where our concentration needs to be on, to make sure that we take these homes down so that we don't have victims of fires.
Absolutely. I agree. Is there a concentration now as far as the road work, or will that be later on with the infrastructure plan?
Well, that will be later on with the infrastructure.
Okay.
To date, we've been in conversation with Senator Casey, Congressman Perry, Scott Perry, and also Toomey. We've talked to Senator Toomey. The infrastructure bill that's coming down is going to be a lot more, a lot more involved, especially with revenue and resources for each city.
Absolutely.
So we're going to wait for that.
Absolutely. I've just been witnessing your team doing just amazing work from public works down onto the fire and police. And I just want to commend them all, especially our HPD. having about 9 out of 10 of our homicides solved already. Just a big, great mark. And then also, I'm not sure if the residents know that our fire has been like sharing walkie-talkies for some time to get the job done and never missed a beat. So it's important, and I do support the allocations for that reason. And just seeing that public works team out there, you know, doing it day by day. Just you've got a great staff. Thank you for the hard work, everyone.
Well, what happened is the former mayor had put into the contract for the ASME contract. And for those employees, they were given $3,000 at the beginning of this year, which we were not aware of when I became in office, January 3rd. So we had to find funding for that.
Yep.
He had promised them $3,000 for each employee, as well as a continuation of $1,500 in January of next year. And then the following year, additional 1,000. So that was not built into the budget. We had to find funding for that. And nothing was considered for our firefighters who are the frontline fighters. And so we think that we should be able to give them a $5,000 bonus as well.
Absolutely.
Police and fire.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
absolutely. Because I mean, if we don't remember the height of the COVID-19 pandemic,
Right.
frontline workers for some time were being left out and forgotten. So I think it's important that we commemorate and also, you know, award them, and look forward to having more people in that
An
role.
incentive to, you know, it's incentive.
Absolutely.
For our employees to know that we care about them
Absolutely.
and that we appreciate all they've done during that process.
I agree. I have no further questions, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. Councilman Daniels, do you have any questions?
So this is a global.
Pardon me?
No.
Uh,
So Bill 7 is limited to 2 direct payments, which is the $5.5 million rehab of the HVAC built unit for the police, and it's the bonus money for police and fire. And then it's the 8.8 that was in the approved budget. It's being used for lost revenue, like a revenue stream in that budget you've already voted on, and then be putting 2 as part of, just like a tax revenue would be in this year's budget. It's being recognized through this ordinance for the federal money as the revenue stream. So that Mr. McCutcheon will do a presentation on the money as part of tonight for reallocation. I believe he's going to touch on that as well. So that's about 13.6 of the balance of the mayor's presentation that comes in a separate secondary ordinance that comes down in the fall for the housing program, for these other items that are more program driven than these particular ones. These 2 are, the HVAC is a true emergency, and the price just keeps going up, and the bonuses are directly allowed under ARPA.
And so in terms of other programming.
There'll be at least one. If the mayor wants to present that all in one ordinance, that'll be a decision to get made over the summer, or it'll be more than one, depending how they want to structure it. So, but the council will vote on each of those appropriations.
Are you talking to me or are you talking to the president? Are you asking me a question? Oh, okay, because you were looking towards. the
I think
president.
she's looking at the slide.
Oh, slide,
presentation.
okay. Well, first of all, we looked at what the cost of repair that we've done for several of our residents in the past, for the roofing, for the window repairs, for door repairs, for furnace, for plumbing repairs. And we kind of just took an estimate of what is needed for some of those homes. As to date, we've already been out in the public and we did an evaluation of how many senior citizens really do need help in the city of Harrisburg. That's how we came up with the $10,000 mark. We set up till $10,000. We don't know if it would be enough, but we'll do what we can do within that period, within that amount. At least 1,200. So we did 500 to 1,200. I'll say that because we've gotten different accounting for how many houses that we could help. It has to be accordingly to their income as well.
Then, it's called in Hall Manor. Will that have a component or an aspect where people are able to swim in it?
Well, we've been contacted by the Red Cross and the River Rescue, and they have agreed to, we don't need we don't need actually to learn how to swim, but they are going to, and they would step up, they volunteer to teach our kids how to swim. Anyone who wants to learn how to swim, they are available to teach them.
And so the
Splash pool is not, right, right.
Just looking from at the pictures.
Mr. Baker, what's the depth level of the pool? 4 feet is the highest. It's the deepest.
Other aspects of the comprehensive plan.
Not at this point. We thought this was a priority. The 4 areas that we addressed are priority for the citizens of Harrisburg. We've given money out to the businesses. We gave $1 million out to the small business in the city of Harrisburg. If you were at any of the town hall meetings, the residents were real adamant about putting the money back out into the city for the residents. That's a lot of the questions and answers that we received. A lot of the incoming comments that came into the city, to the mayor's office, was about putting the access money out into the city of Harrisburg.
Yeah, and I know that that's why.
Well, the residents are outspoken about keeping the pools, but if you were here, and you were here for the last 8 years, you would know that we've put money into that pool for every year. There's a leakage problem in Hall Manor alone that we try to repair, and all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a sore that won't heal and can't repair. And then what we now encounter is the leakage of that pool going into residential homes.
Well, that's wanted.
Right. No, he wanted to keep the pools open. He wanted to keep the pools open, but I'm not going to debate with you because he wanted to keep the pools open. My thing was to close them down last year and not putting additional funding into those pools.
And then the other thing, what's your definition of a small?
And that's another area that we're looking at with Ms. Hill. She's going to be able to evaluate who is a small business, how many employees, and what is their funding needs. We're not yet, because we will. We'll have that back into the next resolution that we give you. All that information will be provided.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I just know per federal guidelines is if you have 500 or less employees. Okay.
Under.
Oh, I was just throwing it out as like a, hey, FYI, that's what, yeah.
You know, I don't want to be.
No, we're not
Oh,
doing
yeah.
that.
No, I was,
And we're not doing that. We gave $1 million out to small businesses as well. And believe me, a lot of them have collapsed.
oh, I know,
since
I
that
understand.
time.
That was just the figure,
Okay.
just as an FYI, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. First, thank you, Mayor, for coming tonight and giving us this presentation on some proposed uses for the ARPA money. I'll start with, I guess, the ones that are going to be voted on essentially tonight. So in total, we're looking at giving out about 252 bonuses to police and firefighters. So 252 employees at $5,000 a bonus. Yes. All right. Do we know how many of them would have started after the first of the year, or is it 0? I know that it's
Oh,
like
we're making sure that those who started at the first year did not receive the funding. These are only ones that were before January 1st.
okay.
And that also takes out.
Right. We had quite a few that left.
All right.
And just a minute. Excuse me. To address that. You can give us an exact.
And you might not be able to answer the whole thing because it's
Yeah.
police and fire, but I'm looking at, if I did my math right, which is just dividing it by 5,000, about 252 bonuses being
Right.
given out for police and fire at
How many
$5,000
separate?
each.
How many? And that would be starting.
Can you please speak into the microphone?
I believe about 130 police officers.
I'll move on to the HVAC system. So I know this is something that is needed for the public safety building in order for the police and fire to be able to function in that building. I know that the cost has went up. I believe it was originally 4.5 million, somewhere around there. That was
1.5 to 4.5 to 5.5. The market's not going to get any better.
All right. And timeline about how long do we plan on it until it's completed? And do we plan on any extra cost along the way?
All right, so the completion is kind of up in the air just because of the way the market's trending right now as far as acquiring equipment. We're getting into the busy season right now, school's letting out, and contractors will start focusing on well, everybody's gone. So I can't really give you an exact estimate on that, but we're looking at probably a minimum of a year project because we'll be doing it in phases. So we can continue to work in the building while they're doing the construction.
Okay, thank you. As far as the functionality of the system now, is it functioning enough that it's safe for our police and fire to work in there if it's going to be a year-long project? Or do we have a plan to be able to relocate them to somewhere else while this is being remedied?
So currently the system is back up and running. We had about a month period where it was shut down. It was kind of touch and go. But we are up and running. We are keeping the building at a reasonable temperature in the summer. And we do have a plan that we will enact that we've worked with both police and fire on to temporarily relocate different departments within the building to other areas in the same building while the work is being done we're planning on putting rooftop units in, which will allow us to start conditioning the space, like more of a compartmentally based conditioning instead of the entire building all at once. Some semblance of comfortable temperature. Whole construction.
Okay. I think that's the only questions I have on the two items for tonight. I do have some questions regarding some of the other information in here. So I noticed that, especially the helping those in need portion, it's pretty much being administrated by the Department of Building and Housing. Do we think that adding several other programs to a department that is staffed to run the programs that they have will cause an overload of work and not allow us to be able to monitor things the way they need to be monitored?
No, we have to be very careful with federal funding. And one thing we don't want to do is have the feds come in here and just do an audit of anything that we have to, especially not on my route. And so what we are looking at is using the company that we already have, Vitus, who is already actually doing all of our technical assistant work here in the city of Harrisburg with the HUD federal funding. Ms. Hill also indicated that there is 2 or 3 other companies that would be agreeable to help her, assist her, because all we need is another program manager and one more technical work.
Okay, and they will be helping on the actual administering of the program?
Vetting the program.
Okay,
And then we also have NW, if we want to utilize them, we have them on contract as well.
okay, and that's vetting the program itself or vetting the individuals who apply for the program?
The
and
whole
monitoring
process, the
entire
whole process.
Okay, and are the firms that we're using, or that we're looking to use, are they local firms? Are they nonprofit
Well, we're
organizations?
not looking at anything. We have Solitis already on contract and we have
Right, and you said
NW
you
on
had
contract.
3 others.
Yeah,
that you-
well, certainly I would bring that before council before I even made a decision like that. That's too important, especially with the additional funding coming in the next month or so.
Right. I would hope that when the next piece of legislation comes down in the fall, that it will be a detailed explanation.
It will be a
of,
detailed
you know, the
explanation and
actual
everything
program
that we
itself.
have.
Okay. I will just say, maybe once I see it, my concerns may be alleviated a little, but I know having the DBHD director also being the community economic director and now adding on 4 programs underneath that same department. I just want to make for sure that it's no slight to Ms. Hill, but I do know that sometimes we can put more on our plate than we can chew at the moment, and knowing how important this is and the importance of transparency.
She would be monitored. She's not going to do the program. We definitely know that she asked to be a part of this. So I will not have her do the whole program. That's why we're looking at using Civitas that we already have in NW, because we know we need a technical assistant and a program manager to vet that program.
Okay, well, I'd like to just, see it when it's all fleshed out.
Okay.
Looking here, it just looks like
Sure.
it's just being administered by DBHD. So
Okay.
that was a little bit of a concern to me, just because I want to make for sure that we have all the pieces in place that we need to make sure things are in order, so that if we do get an audit, because I'm sure 20 years down the line, the federal government's going to be looking for where their money went.
I know.
So it's just making sure we have that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that she said. She doesn't want the federal government. She knows what to do with the federal funding. She's already done it for the last couple of years. She want to make sure that anyone we bring in, she'd be able to supervise it and make sure it's done right.
All right. The pool splash pad pricing. I suppose I'll be speaking a little more to Mr. Baker on this. Which company did we go with to look at the, pricing out the pool splash pad compared to a pool itself or other options? What all options have we looked at? That's for you, and then also a follow-up to the mayor at the same time, just so I don't forget. As we're talking about ensuring that our youth have the resources to learn how to swim. I know you said that you have people who are willing to come in and teach them how to swim. Have we looked at programs to send them maybe to other areas that have larger pools with more depth, so they can learn a little more about swimming, and what programs we're bringing into the city for that?
Well, I met with the American Red Cross, and I've already met with River Rescue. They have the capability to be able to, and many kids that want to learn how to swim, they will be accessible. They said that they have no problem teaching anyone who wants to learn how to swim.
Right.
And I think it's important because most African-American children really do not know how to swim. So
Right.
that's one of the things I was encouraging in any way for the summer program.
Okay. I would also like to see if transportation is needed, how we're looking to provide transportation to those who
course.
wouldn't be able to get to those facilities.
Yes, of course.
Right, so in regards to the options and pricing structure for the spray parks, we are in the phase right now that we're dealing with a consultant. They've looked into basically the industry standard pricing. So it's a rough number. It's not like we've received a bid or anything from an actual contractor. So the number is definitely it's like a budgetary placeholder. It's having as far as to say we've established a contract.
Okay. So you're just using industry standard numbers.
Correct.
All right. And then could you just kind of explain maybe some of the elements of the splash pad facility, just so that the public's aware of what's being proposed in total?
Right. So we right now, again, since we are dealing with the consultant, we are in the conceptual phase of the splash pad. So there are certain key items that I believe the mayor and yourselves will all go over to make sure that everybody is on the same page with there. But we definitely want to incorporate certain attributes like Lazy River Community Center that families can enjoy birthday parties and other kinds of get-togethers and events. Possibly a small business incubator as far as food trucks coming out, there's many aspects. That the beauty of the spray park is that it's almost like a Swiss Army knife, where you can, I wouldn't want to say add on, but there are numerous options for kids to do all kinds of different events there. And it's, I could stand here for 45 minutes just naming all different things that we do out there.
Okay. Thank you for giving us a little insight on that. Back to the administration. I know that we have previously done a small business program. Do we have any follow-up information on the statistics of how that money helped? were businesses able to stay afloat long-term? Did most of them collapse? What was the long-term impact of that program to see if it's worth doing again?
I can certainly get that information from Ms. Hill.
Okay,
I'll make sure you have that.
all right, I'd appreciate that. I think it's
Now,
important.
Do
if
the
we're looking at
questions
it.
again? Let me, how long?
Yes, what was the long-term impact of those grants? Were
What
the
else?
businesses able to stay open long-term? Did they collapse within 6 months, a year? You know, what was the impact of the money? I believe my colleagues already asked about the demolition. You said you'll be getting us that information. Have we looked at partnerships with nonprofits? I know at a lot of the meetings that were held in the public, there were nonprofits that came looking to see how they might be able to maybe get some assistance with their programming as they were affected by the pandemic as well. Have we looked at any partnerships with nonprofits, or do we see that with this money, we'd be able to partner with any nonprofits for any of these programs?
Well, I did talk with the commissioners, all three commissioners, and we're looking at trying to collaborate, working out a system where they're not doing a repeat of what we're doing. So they wanted to see what we had planned in with our offer money. So now I can give them a copy of what we're doing. And then we can compare, whether or not we're duplicating the services. But
Okay.
no, I have not contacted any nonprofits as far as collaborating with them to do anything with them with this money. Because we give money with the CDBG money each year to nonprofits. Most of that money goes out to those individuals who for years and years and years never have been able to sustain themselves, keep coming back to the city of Harrisburg. So at this point, I wanted to make sure that we give the money out to the constituents, the residents who never received any of that money or funding.
Thank you for that. Also, I know the ICA sent a letter giving support.
Yes.
Along with a couple of recommendations. I know I did listen to the meeting that they had where they discussed ARPA. And one of the things they kind of suggested, especially with the trash bill collection or us using money to pay trash bills that were delinquent for the period of time that it can be used for, was maybe looking at a matching fund system so that it's not just the city paying all of it, but that the residents are putting a portion in as well to kind of show that dedication to paying the bill, which also will help to stretch the money out and show and allow us to help more residents. So I think that's something we should definitely look into because I think it will be helpful and allow us to help more residents.
Yes, it would be. Also, the 14 million that's out there in trash bills that's due. I mean, we really need to go after those individuals who owe us that much money.
Right.
I mean, if that's something that city council would like to do, I certainly would be agreeable. Because at this moment, I'm tired of seeing $14 million on my desk. And these residents that sit here and not trying to recoup any of the money.
I believe my colleague here was asking about the solicitor's office's role in collections.
Because we don't
We're
have.
down to three
We're down
bodies
to
in my
two
office.
people.
Excuse me, everyone. Can council members and guests, if you could please speak into the microphone, it does us no good to broadcast if people can't hear questions and responses. So please speak into the microphone when asking questions and responding. Thank you.
I think I spoke loud enough and I'll say it again. We only have two people in the solicitor's office. And as far as when Vice President Green requested information about why taxpayers could not be part of the process of paying their bills, I wanted to say, I'd like to bring the city council a resolution to make those individuals who owe us $14 million. I want to go after them like today.
I guess my point is those $14 million have accumulated over years. And we're seeing this shortage at the solicitor's office at the beginning of this year. So like, what has been the delay?
There is no one working on it right now. There is literally myself, one lawyer, and a secretary. Our budget, the lien specialist was zeroed out in our office. The collections attorney, we have not been able to hire somebody. And we don't have a deputy. We don't have a litigator or contracts attorney. I mean, we're doing all things, right? I spent my day doing right to know answers. I mean, so that is the reality of where the city is right now. And it's not for not advertising. We've done more advertising now than we've done ever since I've been there in more places. It's just the marketplace like it is for so many things. They're just, we've had applicants who just could not get through a background check.
But then it's not the issue of legislation, it's an issue of capacity.
At the moment, it's that, but even new legislation is also capacity because we write the legislation. So
Yeah, but I mean, like right now, we know we're owed the $14 million. We have a right to seek those $14 million. We just don't have the staffing to do it.
we're in any combined offices, we don't have the staffing to do it. So.
Thank you. I just have, I think, one more question, and then I'll open it up if anyone else has any other questions. What was NW Financial's role in creating this ARPA recommendation? I know that we hired them to help us, I guess, vet what could be done or couldn't be done, and they went to the public meetings that were held. I guess overall, what was their role in crafting this?
Their role was just to take the ideas we had that we took from the roundtable community meetings we had, the internal meetings, and then when we came up with a menu of different options to make sure it was an allowable expense. Because some of the ideas that people had weren't necessarily allowed within the ARPA rulemaking process.
All right. That's the only questions that I have. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues. If anyone else has any questions regarding, I believe it is Bill 7. Seeing none, I will say thank you. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you, Vice President Green. Pleasure to be here.
The next item is Resolution 27 of 2022. Mr. Parker, would you read that into record, please?
Resolution 27, 2022. A resolution approving the first proposed 2022 budget reallocation.
Thank you. I suppose for administration purposes, I will suggest that the last resolution or Bill 7 be put on next week's agenda for a vote. And now we'll move on to Resolution 27 of 2022. If you would just introduce yourself for the public's knowledge, and then you can start with your presentation.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chair Green. Good evening, council members, committee members. Brian McCutcheon, Accounting Manager. Also this evening with me, my cohort in the Bureau of Financial Management are the city's new budget manager, Timothy Brooks. Marita Kelly, of course, Finance Director, not available this evening, not available this week. She's attending the GFOA National Conference in Austin. If you're okay, Chair Green, if I could start, there's 3 appendix tabs on the file for the reallocation. And I thought I'd work from most simple to a little more complex into the general fund. Appendix C is the events fund. And on this schedule, it's made up of 2 main budget units, namely the Arts Fest piece, and then the rest of the city events are located in the other budget unit. This one is fairly straightforward. When we did the initial budget preparation on this fund, we took a conservative approach on revenue and then a corresponding relation on expenditures. And we were looking at the prior year of 2021's activity, but in actually seeing actual results for Arts Fest, which just occurred, the revenue stream is much stronger when it comes to the licenses and permit revenue that comes in from vendors. Instead of, for example, $40,000, we've actually achieved over $60,000. On a similar note, for the other events, including 4th of July, Capona, Again, revenue was estimated at conservative levels, and in further discussions I've had with the events director, she felt confident that in a similar way, the license and permit revenue will be much stronger for the year. So this schedule is a simple budget adjustment on both the revenue and expenditure side. For Arts Fest, we're requesting $20,000 increase on revenue to offset a $20,000 increase on expenditure. And then down below, for the other events and the other budget unit, we're requesting a $25,000 increase. Similarly for revenue and the overall expense, the detail line items that make up that budget unit.
Okay, so just to be clear, for Arts Fest, we exceeded the revenue that we expected, and we also exceeded our expenditures, so they balance out?
Correct. Yeah, the revenue's already materialized, and yeah, expenses are higher than what we originally budgeted.
Okay, and then for the other events, such as 4th of July, Capona, fireworks, these are estimates of the revenues and expenditures?
Right. The bottom line, and it's highlighted in the green for licenses and permits, that we're now saying we're estimating revenue will be 75,000 as an estimate, and the expenditures, after closer look with the events manager, for example, on 4th of July for fireworks, our original budget is $9,400, but that's not. It is too low. The actual expenditure will be more in the $16,000 range.
All right, so we are asking to increase the expenditures and the estimated revenue.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
If we do not achieve the estimated revenue, it will come out of fund balance?
That's correct.
Mr. Baker is shaking his head no.
Oh.
So special events is completely self-funded. So if they don't create the revenue, they don't spend the expenditure. So there's no worries. It's not going to come out of general fund if we don't make cash. We just don't spend it. So
And that's more of a policy.
Yeah, I mean, that is the policy. We're not using special events. But I mean, the beauty of this is we're just a net neutral. You know, like we're not
Right.
spending more than we're making. So we just need to put it up in the finance area. All good.
All right. I'll open it up to my colleagues on this appendix here, which is Appendix C, if anyone has any questions or comments. All right, seeing none, we can move on to the next one unless you have any more information on that.
No, that's fine. I'll move now to Appendix B, the Neighborhood Services Fund. And starting for footnote A, relative to highway manager, this particular adjustment is reflective of a technical position correction from the preparation of the original budget, mainly to mean that the amounts that were determined personnel-wise were not accurate as we had originally prepared. It had to do with the personnel schedule that was utilized, where some amounts didn't cross over or calculate properly. So we mentioned this previously, but we wanted to take the opportunity now to clean this up as part of the first proposed reallocation. That's for the highway manager. The next item down, item C, is a recent request for a new position in the Neighborhood Services Fund for lot administrator. And the annual salary is listed on the far right. The 66,300, sorry, 63,300. And it's been prorated for the remainder of the year, which is roughly like 50% of the remaining year. This request is a mayoral recommendation for a new public works position. Item B, footnote B, involves strengthening the city's trash collection services staff with 3 operators, motor equipment operators. And again, it's the salary levels are for this particular position a little over 44,000, but again, the amounts that are showing up for the proposed amendment have been prorated for salary and payroll tax expense. So what this does overall to the Neighborhood Services Fund, we originally, in preparing the budget, have a $1.3 million ask or reduction of beginning fund balance. So the total amendment here of 126,003 will increase that draw on beginning of year fund balance. And that adjusted up to 1.436 million.
All right, are there any questions from my colleagues regarding this? I'll start with President Bowers.
Thank you, Vice President Green. I do have a question regarding line C relative to the lot administrator. You mentioned that this is a new position. Is there a job description? Is this a full-time role? I have some questions.
Understood. I'm tapped into the numbers, the financial, but if I could defer either to Dan or maybe even Nate on this particular item.
Sorry, President Bowers, can you repeat the question, please?
Good evening again, Director Spriggs. I just had a question regarding the lot administrator position. I understand it's a new role. Just curious to know if there's a job description. Is it a full-time role? What will this person be doing?
Well, that job description was initially created by the Department of Human Resources.
Okay.
So I did have a chance to glance at it. Once again, this was an administrative appointment, so I'm not very sure how to answer that honestly, in an honest way for you.
Okay.
So that probably would be a good question for the business administrator or the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
So a lot of this goes off of the vacant and abandoned lots that we have in the city. A little bit over 200, I think 206 is the exact number. It requires a great deal of upkeep and work to make sure that we are staying on top of things. And right now it's an other duty as assigned, split to a couple different people, including somebody in purchasing. So what this does is it gives us a person who's going to go out there, keep tabs on all of the lots and make sure all maintenance work, be it mowing, weed pulling, making sure vacant cars and abandoned property and dumping doesn't happen on these lots, some of which are owned by the redevelopment authority.
And this is a full-time role, is
Yes.
that correct? And is there some type of, I'm a fan of metric and rubrics and some type of measurement as to how this person will maintain the lots or share information regarding the status of the lots?
We'll gladly add to a quarterly report where they can come in and talk about how many lots they've had work done on, how many mowed, how many dumping sites have been cleaned up, and we'll report all of that out. Because right now we do not have a real person truly on the ground to go and look through this stuff and make sure stuff's being done and followed up on, whether that's dumping abandoned cars, people dumping trash. We have a hard enough time sometimes with redevelopment here, just marketing the properties. But if we're not doing our job and making sure picking up trash, cleaning things up there, it's making it even more harder.
I see.
And
Well,
I will get you the job description.
thank you. That was going to be my next question. Will this person be accessible to the public at all if there is a resident that would like to report a lot that has been abandoned or?
Yes, and that's going to be one of the key components of it. This is a person who is fully responsible on the ground and in the field working on that. We'll be able to work with codes, work with public works to make sure stuff's getting done.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? I do have a question as far as the lot administrator. Looking at the budget, there was no salary put in. I know that it was like zeroed out, but there was no estimated salary for that position. How do we come up with a salary? Like, how do we know we're not overpaying for a lot administrator?
It's almost like a maintenance technical position. So the way we looked at it is we looked at engineering, lights, and what would be a person. Technical maintenance management level position who would have years experience in being able to notice things, and that matches up with the salary for
Okay, so this person they're not management, though. This position is not management. This is a kind of like a
management classification. They don't have any direct reports, more they'll be working with union staff that's working for me. A couple different areas.
okay. So this person will need to work well with others in order to get things done.
Yes.
Because they'll be working with several different departments in order to make sure things are remedied.
Mayor said they're gonna have to be a master of spreadsheets.
Mm.
So there's gonna be a lot of tracking because it's 200 and I think it's 206 the number of lots we have that need to be worked on. Annual, a weekly, a monthly basis. So it's quite a bit of work. We're hoping that this position will help us get some of these lots in better shape, not only to make the better properties, but also help us on the redevelopment side.
Okay. And this is a never filled before position, correct? It's a new position. So will this person be working with organizations that are doing some of this work, such as cleaning up some of these vacant lots? I know like Cloud.
They'll be working not only with city staff, but they will be working with volunteer efforts.
Okay. And will they have access to systems such as our 311 system that monitors calls that come in from the public and tracks their outcomes and things like that? I think it's going to be very important for us to be able to track what's going on with the different lots as well as what's going on with complaints that come in.
And that's going to be one of the best things for it because we'll be able to track metrics where calls do come in.
Okay. I think that's all of the questions I have regarding this. Councilwoman Rouse.
Sorry, thank you, Vice President Green. I was wondering who's going to be holding the lot manager responsible? Who's their manager?
They'll be working underneath.
Okay, so do you already have a system set up, Mr. Spriggs, on how you're going to track this person, that you're holding them accountable? What is going to be your evaluation process for them?
Well, since this is a new position, I haven't gotten that far. I have something in place currently for how I track the lots, but the administration wanted additional help or something different. So,
okay, so you're going to be working on how you yourself are going to hold them accountable to make sure they're tracking the lots are getting clean. You're going to work on that as well.
absolutely, but I intend to hand the reins over to the person that we hire for this position.
Right. But you're going to have a system set up to hold them accountable because
Absolutely. I hold everyone in my department accountable.
Okay.
So absolutely.
And what will be the probational period for this? If anyone can answer that, how long is there a probational period? Is it a new position?
Technically, no, it's a manager, it's at will employment. So often HR will give us 60-day or 6-month probation because that used to mirror the union contract, but it is an employee at will as managers are. That will be, I think, up to Mr. Spriggs, whether he feels it needs a probationary period in his department. But it's going to be a transfer in from an existing employee, is my understanding. So it's not going to be an unknown commodity.
Okay, I guess we'll have to see how it goes.
All right, and then before we move on, just quick question for, I guess, line B. So we're looking to hire 3 new motor equipment operators. If you just give us an overview what the need is or why we need to hire them.
Okay, so yes, ma'am. So Vice President Green. So when we originally looked at the budget, as you know, the budget was presented to this council multiple times. And the last time it came down, when I agreed to accept what was in front of me, I didn't have an opportunity to look at it when 3 motor equipment operator positions was cut. So we're currently utilizing highway employees, a lot of our skilled labor employees to drive in the Department of Sanitation, as well as some of the injuries that we have for our current drivers. So we're looking to fill those 3 positions. I believe 4 was cut initially, but we're looking to fill 3 because I believe that's adequate for what we need for the department.
All right, thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions before we move on to the next schedule? President Bowers?
Thank you, Vice President Green. I just have a follow-up regarding the lot administrator. So, Mr. Hartman, you mentioned that this role is comparable to a management role in engineering. I would like to see the job description of the engineering manager or the role that's comparable. We just received via email the job description for the lot administrator from Human Resources, and some of the essential functions in my mind don't equate to an engineering manager. So I just want to
Not the
understand.
engineering manager that you would have, for example, Percy in the position below that.
Well, whatever the role
get
is
that over to
in engine traffic and engineering, that's what I'm trying to see. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we can move to the next schedule. Thank you. Thank you.
Just one last comment on, I know Dave mentioned the events fund, and you asked me about if expenses are higher, and I didn't make myself clear enough. I meant, when we talked about fund balance, I wasn't referring to the general fund. I meant the overall fund itself, but I get where Dave is going with the idea of limiting expenditures to revenue within that fund. Okay, I guess we're ready for the general fund, which has most items in play here in this request. There are 11 footnotes, and I think Tim and I are going to break this up. I'm going to have him lead off with the first set of footnotes, and I can pick up at the tail end. So I'll hand it over to Tim.
Good evening, Council. Footnote A is a technical position correction, kind of to allude to what Nate was saying. If we look on the schedule, the first one is for Office of Treasury, Accounting Clerk 5. This was the position that was originally to be in a approved 22 budget. It was actually cut for budgetary reasons to help it balance. It was determined that it was mission critical, therefore we're now requesting that position at about $34,986. Moving down, Bureau of Financial Management, the Auditor 2 position, it was simply a calculation error. We overcalculated and we're essentially going to decrease the salary about $1,862. Going down further, the Paralegal 3 was actually what was put into the budget. It should have been Paralegal 2. So we're going to change it from Paralegal 3 to Paralegal 2 and decrease the salary around $3,616. Moving down further, for the Department of Recs and recreation and facilities, laborer 2 positions, the park ranger position, and the park and facilities assistant position. All are very much the same thing, where it was calculation errors. We're going to be increasing the salaries by $3,640. Moving on to footnote B, it's.
One moment, just
Okay.
because we're going through so many in each footnote.
Absolutely.
I'll start with, do we have questions for footnote A? I will start with my question first, because I already have the mic. For the treasurer's office, the accounting clerk position, are we able to get more information on what's needed for that position, why that position is needed? I know when the treasurer was here, we asked about his office and if he was okay with the staff that was there and whether we needed to add some of those positions that weren't funded. And I believe he said that he was able to operate on those. So I don't know if he's here and able to speak to it or.
The treasurer said that he'll be able to open the office full-time with that position back.
All
Just to
right.
handle the amount of people. That was his conversation he had with the mayor. So this would hopefully allow for him to be able to all the additional foot traffic as it's just as it stands.
Okay, perhaps he'd be able to come to our legislative session to kind of give a little bit of an overview and a timeline of when he'd hope for that to happen, as if it's dependent on hiring this person. Does he already have an idea? Is it someone internally that might be applying for it? Or are we looking at starting a search from the beginning, because we know that can take months, and then are we looking at months before it's able to open full time? So just some questions I think he might be able to answer better for his office.
I'll reach out to him this evening.
All right. Any other questions from our colleagues on the items from footnote A?
Sorry, for obvious reasons, I'm not seeing very clearly. But are any of these impacting our collective bargaining agreement? Are they just coming in consistency with our CBA, or is it just especially for the Parks and Recs position, which should be
For
CBA positions, right?
County Clerk 5, yes, is.
The what?
The County Clerk 5 position that we're talking about is with their union covered.
So the salary adjustment is to bring it consistent with collective
It's to
bargaining.
put it back in the budget.
Okay.
And yeah,
Well, and the parks, there are parks.
I was going to say there were several positions that salaries were miscalculated in the original budget that are being corrected in this budget reallocation.
that's correct. And we did a subsequent follow-up and with HR, to your point about CBA, and making sure that it's consistent and agreeable to what's laid out there. And that's what this represents, to get the budget amount to match up to those proper salaries.
Sorry, I thought you were asking about the
Did
other
anyone
position.
grieve the fact that, did we have any grievances around people not being paid?
No, they were paid what they had to be contractually. So it's really correcting the budget document.
Any other questions? All right, I think we can go on to the next item.
Item B alludes to reallocating budget from the business development to fund special assistance to the Director of Equity and Compliance. If you look at the top of the schedule, Development Director, this is a vacant position. We'll be taking about $38,400 and reallocated into the confidential secretary for the social equity and special assistant.
All right. So just to be clear, the Director of Economic Development position is vacant. It's currently being filled as a dual role by Ms. Hill. And so we're going to move money from that position to fund the confidential secretary position and the social equity and affirmative action office that does not have a director. So organizationally, chart-wise, they're in a department being a confidential secretary to themselves.
So in the actual budget document that was voted on in February, there was an extra provision added in the end as one of the amendments, saying that the confidential secretary was that assistant's job. It just turned out that there were two different confidential secretaries, and the one it referenced was already filled. So this was to correct that. But essentially, this is the assistant to Mr. Singleton. That's who this position is. We sort of had to thread a needle to get it into the budget language.
Okay. And then the remaining salary for the Director of Economic Development would be used towards Ms. Hill's salary for fulfilling both roles?
Yes, that's correct. That to supplement what she is already compensated for out of the CDBG funds. So, and you can see there still is ample budget available to fund that difference that was specified previously for Ms. Hill.
All right. I will open it up to my colleagues for any questions. Seeing none, we can move on to letter C. And of course, if anyone has any questions later, they can always come back. But
Letter C alludes to sign language services for the city council meetings and office location improvements. Looking on the schedule up top, it says the office of mayor. Right next to that is contracted personnel services for sign language interpreter for about $7,500. And just below that is office of the mayor office furniture. And we're going to be requesting $4,450. Chart down just a little bit to the next area, next C footnote, general expenses and officer furniture, which includes the atrium furniture. I'm looking to get a new reception desk for the front out here. And we're looking to acquire about $3,130.
all right, any questions on footnote C? Seeing none, we can go on to footnote D.
All right. Footnote D alludes to an adjustment to reflect prior mayoral commitment to match job duties. Going to the schedule, down to where you see footnote D, Office of Business Administrator. And this is simply to give this wonderful gentleman here an assistant, a special assistant. And we're going to look for just a raise. My apologies. Just a raise, bring her salary up to complement. We're going to be increasing it for about $5,383. Going further down, Bureau of Traffic and Engineering, the engineering project manager. We're going to be also increasing that salary from the current to about $85,300, and we'll be requesting $9,689 for that position.
Any questions regarding this?
Yes.
President Bowers?
Thank you, Vice President Green. So I have questions really regarding both of the salary increases for line items D. I'm curious to note, how have both the special assistant to the business administrator and the engineering project manager's duties changed? And what merits these salary increases? Is there something, have they received a special evaluation that merits these increases?
I'll start with special assistant in my office. The mayor has added other duties, including working with the Law Bureau as it relates to hearing complaints, as it relates to human relations complaints. And on top of that, the mayor had made a commitment to her, make her salary level with her assistant. So it's a little bit of adding more duties as it relates to her HR background from her time that she spent in HR in municipal government elsewhere. And then also
One follow-up question. So you said the mayor made a commitment to level your special assistant salary with her assistant? Now I know she has several. Which one are we talking about? Her executive assistant, I guess, or primary?
I think special assistant.
Okay. Were these new duties that the mayor added reflected on a job description for your special assistant?
Yeah, I think the reality was simply the mayor, when she asked Ms. Robinson to come on board, made a commitment to a salary that in the budget process got lost with all the changes. So she was told, would you come on board? This is the salary. And just in the process, it was a lost detail. And the mayor had asked that we make the adjustment because of that commitment. We said we had to come back because the budget had already gone through on the number it had gone through on. But that was the commitment for the person to come on board and work for the city, which in a new administration is the kind of level setting that a mayor does when they're bringing on a new team. So that, and she has taken on more and more duties because that frankly is what happens to managers in the city of Harrisburg. You start doing 2 things and you have 5 more 3 months later. That's the reality of the manager.
Okay, thank you. Now, what about the engineering project manager?
Yeah, there's been a lot more duties as it relates to public being out there. So I personally know, sitting looking at Percy there, the man works from the earliest time in the morning to the latest time at night, dealing with vendors, dealing with contractors, dealing with the public, dealing with residents. He's out there at all hours, fielding press requests. He's done a lot. So a lot of this is as it relates to what the mayor sees out of him taking on these duties. They are duties of the job, but they do keep him out at all different hours, last night included. This morning, he's always out there. So a lot of this is as it relates to industry, what he's doing, what he's working in, putting that pay to where she feels is the right spot that not only we could just keep him, but also reward him for a lot of the work he is doing. Because he's a 311 system himself with the amount of phone calls he takes, especially State Street is a recent example of that. And then also on top of that, 2nd Street, while we're sitting here doing this, calls as it relates to 2nd Street. So a lot of it is a public outreach component to it. The other aspect of it is it's just an industry as it relates to engineering, project management. It's gone above and beyond.
Has there been any written evaluation for either of these employees that there's something in writing that merits these salary increases, or it's just simply the mayor would like to extend?
Mayor would like
these
to,
increases?
that process happens typically over the summer.
Okay, thank you.
And there, one other factor is that historically, when someone basically picks up the job of their boss, they automatically get increased funding for working out of class, even as a manager. There was no funding in the engineering spot to do that with. So they've been working in a manner that they would normally have gotten paid a significantly different salary when you take over your boss's job.
So you're speaking of in the absence of the city engineer?
Yeah, the salaried city engineer. So it happens in department after department. If someone takes over the director's job for whatever reason, because they're on a long leave of absence or the spot is different, under what we've done in the city for decades, is that they get the difference because the salary is available to pick up their duties plus more duties.
Well, help me understand that, considering that we are paying a consultant for engineering services. That was supposed to be the engineer's salary.
Right, but
Is that correct?
But that is for engineering services. The city's engineer is also a manager of a department. And part of their salary was to manage that entire department. That is what Mr. Bullock is doing in the absence of a on-site full-time engineer.
So then would his title change at all with that, or no? It's still strictly a project manager, although he has, what I'm hearing is assumed some roles that the previous city engineer
He's managing
duties
the staff
okay.
of that department. I mean, that's what he's doing, unless I'm missing something.
I don't know. I haven't seen
so I was talking to Dan.
an updated job description to note these additional duties. So not sure. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we can go to the next.
Footnote E alludes to Neil's capacity issues. Ultimately, it's additional outside legal counsel services to supplement in-house legal services. Go down, you'll see Office of City Solicitor, salaries and wages. We'll be pretty much offsetting. The original request was going to be $100,000, but we're going to offset the position. Offset the position salary by the original request, which the current request is now going to be $53,625.
Okay, and are we offsetting it by vacant positions?
That would reflect the Law Bureau's diminished capacity during the first 4 months of the year. There's some personnel savings that occurred, so we can use that approximately $47,000 to offset the $100K increase ask. So the overall budget adjustment is only $53,600 compared to the $100,000 ask for the additional outside legal.
Any questions? Seeing none, we can move on to the next.
Footnote A alludes to additional costs for engineering project management services by Dowwood Engineering.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Excuse me, I apologize. Footnote F would allude to additional costs for engineering project management services by Dowwood Engineering.
Is that an additional $100,000, making it $250,000 for city engineering services?
I have Percy coming over to further illuminate.
Mr. Bullock, if you could
Good
just
evening,
introduce
Council.
yourself.
Good evening, Council. Percy Bullock, City Project Manager Department. And your question again about the Dowwood increase?
So if I'm correct, looking at the schedule here, it's a request of $100,000 increase.
Yes.
And the original request that was in the budget was for $150,000, which will make the total amount allotted $250,000.
Yes. Well, what happened here is we did not anticipate what happened with State Street. State Street has hit us really hard. We are redesigning it, as you know, because the public has come to it. So the redesigning process of it, putting all the entities that go in with it, all the traffic analysis, all the different people who work for Dowwood are coming in. So anticipating this, and other projects are going in the future as the year goes on. I'd rather be a little bit ahead of it than behind it and come up short. Just anticipation portion.
All right. I'm going to open it up after my comments. I guess comments and questions. One, where are we in the search of a city engineer? Two, it's ridiculous from my standpoint to pay $250,000 for consulting services when we can have someone in the position to do this job. There are things that are always going to be coming up that aren't predictable. The purpose of having a city engineer, like we are a city with too much work going on not to have someone in that job. And we're just going to continuously rack up bill after bill after bill. And essentially we're saying we're not willing to invest in our city by having a city engineer and instead look to go with an outside firm that doesn't build that long-term history and residual knowledge of our city. I think it's ridiculous that we weren't willing to pay, we wouldn't pay an engineer $250,000. Let's just be honest. So for us to say we're going to pay an engineering firm $250,000, and it just makes absolutely no sense. So I guess, yeah, if you can just speak to that.
So there's a couple things to unpack. First thing is extra $100,000 is as it relates to State Street. Original State Street design was not done by the city engineer, by an outside firm. This is just paying for the second iteration. That's the easiest way on how to look at that. Percy doesn't know exactly what those bills are going to go to. He's just trying to get ahead of it. It's not going to go above and beyond. Looking at the original plan sheet that was there, we knew we had to go and do something about it because there was a major issue as it relates to parking, especially as it relates to ADA handicap parking in that corridor. We would have opened us up to some major issues with that prior plan. So these are necessary. This is a necessary bill that we would have paid for now, or we would have paid for. As it relates to the engineering search, we had one person who did apply with a background in design work for highway. Joni Willingham, the HR director, had made multiple attempts to get in touch with this individual, and to no avail would the person come in for a phone interview, for the first interview. It's still posted. She's still actively trying to get people. We're struggling, as Neil is struggling. Licensed positions, we're just generally in government struggling to fill. It's not a unique to Harrisburg situation. PennDOT is having similar struggles. Law firms, the state's having similar struggles. It's something we're dealing with. We're actively trying to handle, but ultimately we're struggling. I would love to have the best answer that we had 3 or 4 applicants that had the 3 to 5+ years experience in design work as it relates to roadway design. We just did not get that in. We had one, and much like when Neil has interviews, you don't always get everybody to return calls. You don't get always everybody fitting what you exactly need. And the one that we had that fit the bill, he did not get back in touch with Joni. I wish I had a better response to that, but that is the answer.
All right. Salary for the engineer. I think we discussed this during the budget. We need to increase it. That's probably why we're not getting anyone to apply. I wouldn't apply for a job that I can go anywhere else that pays a lot more. And obviously it's a service that requires this amount of money, as we're looking at putting $250,000 into this position, essentially just through an engineering firm. As far as the State Street design, has Dalwood or the engineering department looked back at any of the previous designs? Because the final design that came with the Switch Street parking was like design number 3 that was passed, not even passed, it was recommended through the engineering department in December of 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. It wasn't the original design. It wasn't the design that had, the original design didn't have the Switch Street parking. Have we looked back at some of those original plans and discussions that were talked to us, the citizens, and with council about before we just go through a whole complete redesign phase that cost obviously a lot of money, because we're paying an engineer to do what we paid another engineer to do. And if we're just going to throw all that in the trash, then we're just throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars in the trash.
Yes, is the answer. We have been. There were initially 3 to 5 submitted under the old engineer, and they're being revised and relooked at currently with Dalwood. But those 3 to 5, you must understand and recall, they weren't satisfactory. So only 1 out of those 5 were selected. So that's what Dalwood is doing, is trying to basically reinvent the wheel, what's left, and put it together. But right now, nothing's been put on paper for final design, of course, because we're going through the process and making sure the residents get the opportunity to come out and see the design. We've had 2 meetings as dated today, as yesterday, and the next one is on the 22nd. We'll gather the data between that one, the 6th and the 22nd, and come back with something at that display. Even before that is permanent, you have to go through PennDOT itself and say, hey, here we are. Do you accept this? Okay, I just want to go back a little bit to the first question. Even when the old engineer was here, we did have other engineering firms assist him. So in that being said, there was other costs that were out there. So even with the $150,000 when you put on for an engineer, you had other essential costs that equated somewhere in terms of $300,000. We're not reaching that point. There are different firms around, or agencies that fit the bill, that are on our bill even still currently, with some of the activities that happened in the city as of the last 2 or 3 years. And in the future projects we have going on, other firms are still a part of it. So along with Dawood, they're working simultaneously with 3 or 4 other engineering firms that are going to cost someone in the area of $200,000, regardless whether it's just one engineer or not. I want to make that clear. It's just not one person doing the complete task for the city. He also reaches out like a spider web and grabs some other webs that have specialties in different areas for help. So you got to keep that in mind, please.
Right. I think we do understand that. I guess we're just looking at, we didn't get rid of any of the other firms we were working with, right? We didn't
Correct.
drop any bills by adding Dawood, but we're
No,
increasing
they're
the
still there.
cost. That's
Right.
kind of what we're getting on. We didn't really
Different
like get
projects.
rid of other projects, any other firms that were on other projects. We didn't decrease our cost anywhere, but it looks like their cost is significantly higher.
It's project specific, so it goes up and down depending on the year, depending on what they're working on. Percy, would you be able to get like a better year by year comparison of what the total cost would be?
Yes, I would need time to get everybody's total cost of projects back into, yes.
Right. And yeah, if you guys could get us an analysis of, I guess, just looking at the engineering actual spends over the past 2 or 3 years, just so that, or I guess maybe 4, just so we can do a little pre-COVID, so that we can see just and analyze what's the difference in what we're spending with having a city engineer and having firms, because we're always going to have firms because no one knows everything when it comes to engineering. Compared to having a firm along with all the other firms as well, to be able to reach what we need. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to my colleagues. I'll start with President Bowers here.
Thank you, Vice President Green. I do have a few questions. Okay, so I'm looking at the amended version of Resolution 12, which shares the agreement with Dawood. And then I looked at Resolution 6 of 2022, which was the other piece. But just to review, our agreement with Dawood is through December 31st of 2022. I do find it concerning that we're now in the month of June and we really don't have any prospects for a city engineer. So that's one thing. Just wanted to keep that agreement date top of mind. I think it's noted here that the maximum payout is $150,000. So how will that change given this additional $100,000? Will that impact the agreement at all, or it's subject to change?
So the agreement, I have not studied the agreement for this evening. I'll go back and look at it, Madam President. But if has our typical language, it's subject to amendment by agreement of the parties fully executed by authorized, which would be the mayor and the controller of our office. And so if the allocation is approved, there would be a simple addendum to the agreement.
To the agreement. Okay, just wanted to note, make sure that wasn't the impact. When we brought on Dawood, Mr. Bullock, I believe there were about a dozen or 13 projects that were pending that needed an engineer's approval. You mentioned, and Mr. Hartman mentioned, that Dawood has been expending a lot of their time on the State Street project. So if you could please let us know how many of the previous projects have been completed, or is their focus primarily State Street at this point?
Right now, our primary focus is State Street. That's what was directed to us to focus on. But then we didn't forget about the others. So we have a project over on 15th and Her Street. We have the project combining with the state with Arsenal and 15. So we're doing it with that. Of course, we have 2nd Street project, which we all know about that. We're slowly coming to, end with that closely in November. We have.
So how many of the previous projects that were maybe in limbo that needed their approval are either now in progress or have been completed?
Well, none of them completed because of
State Street.
Not only because of State Street, because the time factor didn't evaluate them to be completed as of this point. The earliest will be in November. And so none of them had a completion date at this point in time.
Okay,
They were all further in the
nothing was
future.
pressing.
Right, nothing was
Okay.
pressing at all, but they were all happening at the same time.
I see.
Yeah, and then Council President, I'll also add, there are things that pop up through like Jeff Knight's shop, like for example, last week, street vacation as it relates to, and traffic study as it relates to Catherine Hershey School that's going in. They're doing constant work on that. That's quick stuff that's cycling through. So they are working on quite a bit of things that aren't necessarily like long-term projects like that, where it's more of just the review that the engineer would typically do.
That's needed. Okay. And I guess just a final comment, I would like to see the deliverables that Vice President Green requested. But I just feel like at this hefty price tag, the residents of State Street should get everything that they want. I mean, I really have high expectations for Dalwood. I was present at both of the public meetings, and I think that they went well. But given this price tag, and given the additional duties, Mr. Bullock, that you've taken on in the absence of our former city engineer, I have even greater expectations.
Yes.
Because we're investing a lot of money in these services in the absence of a city engineer. I guess I just have expectations for the expertise. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from our colleagues? Seeing none, we can move on.
Footnote G alludes to increases for summer staffing of parks and recreation programs. The original budget was $200,000. Need assessed that another $75,000 would be needed, increasing the budget to $275,000. Mr. Baker here is here to answer any questions if you guys have.
All right. Mr. Baker, if you could just tell us the reasoning behind the need for the extra $75,000, we'd appreciate it.
So the need for the increase for the additional funding is just to offset the cost of the across the board increase for our summer staff. So we're trying to stay somewhat competitive when it comes to salaries, and this is the only way we can do it, is just to increase the numbers across the board.
Okay, so essentially you're increasing the salary that then higher than what you originally proposed. And so now you need to increase in funding.
Correct, yes.
And are you guys still hiring? Are there positions available? I mean, we've got a couple people to watch, so you might want to let them know.
Yeah, so we have passed our deadline for applicants, but we will still take positions, we'll still take applicants because we always need additional staff. We can use staff, we are not at full staff yet, but it's right now we are hitting a serious backlog because so many people have applied last minute, and we are way behind when it comes to getting through the applications and vetting the applicants, doing interviews, and then doing the orientation. So we're working on it, but we are going to start our summer programs very soon. The 11th, the pool's open, and the 13th, we start the actual programs themselves. So it's kind of a yes and a no question, but ultimately, yes, we will still take them.
All right, thank you. That's the only question I have. I'll open it to my colleagues. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tim. I'll move on to take on the last four footnotes. The general fund, footnote H. Pertains to the city's vehicle maintenance center, the VMC. And this is again strengthening staff there at the facility with two additional mechanic fours for that budget unit.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we can move on to the next one.
Moving on to footnote I. And this pertains to traffic and engineering. I think I have a pretty good handle on this. This really relates to prior year services that were invoiced that weren't anticipated in the original preparation of this year's budget. ATS is Atlantic Transportation Services, and involves various traffic control related their time, service time, and there were some related supplies along with that. So to accommodate that, the increase in related budget lines is the $14,575.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Next up would be footnote J. I think I may hand this one off to Neil, but this is a significant, as you can see, increase in this line in our general expenses budget unit pertaining to anticipated settlements that are, the feel is there will be several of these claims materializing this year.
And we covered that in executive session.
Any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none.
What I'll do next is come down to the total budget adjustment for the general fund before I finish up with footnote K. This reflects everything we've gone over. And as you know, we developed our current budget with an approved net budget surplus this year of $1,768,000 approximately. And when you factor everything into this point on the schedule, this is a reduction of that net budget surplus. Of the reduction is $1,186,000. So that reduces our net surplus down to a bit under $600,000 currently. So it's an impact definitely, but at least we are showing still a favorable surplus at this point. For footnote K, this is a one-for-one, again, increase in revenue and increase in expenditure within the general fund. And what's driving this, of course, as everybody's aware, painfully, I'm sure, the effect of fuel costs, gas prices. So it involves our vehicle maintenance center line. And based on a review that we've done of expenditures to date and the recent payments we've done for the fuel fleet cards program, the feel is to see us through the remainder of the year that we need another $300,000 in budget to accommodate that. So that's the first part. Then I was thinking, all right, what do I do from here to try to, again, I'm trying to preserve what I just mentioned, that net budget surplus. There is good news in the sense within the city's debt service fund, when we do the budget for the bonds that the city guarantees for the Verizon Commonwealth Tower location, the bonds that were issued by HRA, the Redevelopment Authority. We're aware of the detailed funding that goes in to accommodate that debt service with maturities that occur every 6 months. The debt service on those bonds is approximately $2 million, but we tailor out the funding sources, which includes the monthly rent that comes in. The city does do a minimum contribution amount of $950,000 for current year 2022. The wild card in this, so to speak, is the conditional rent that may or may not happen from Harristown Development Corp. If they have successful operations to produce positive revenue on their end, they are required to remit to HRA conditional rent. It doesn't happen though until April. That's why we never can tell how to gauge that. So on a conservative position, we budget for it as if it will not happen so that we have coverage. Good news, it materialized to roughly $425,000 recently in April. So what that means is that's that much less in budget the debt service fund needs to accommodate maturities. So I thought we would try to utilize that budget in the debt service fund by moving it to the general fund, $300,000. And what that does, instead of that budget being dispersed for debt service, it becomes an interfund transfer to the general fund, which results in revenue for the general fund as a transfer in, and that can accommodate the increase we would like to do. We're proposing for the increase in estimated fuel costs. And we wanted to act on this now to try to remedy it prior to council's recess for the summer.
All right, are there any questions regarding this? Seeing none. I believe that's it for the budget reallocation.
That covers, yes, all three appendices.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to go over this. I do have a question, comment, kind of. So I noticed several positions were added back in that were zeroed out in the original budget. And they were added back in, obviously, at only a half year salary. If we could first, for the administration, do you believe that these are all the positions that will be being added back in? I know there were several positions, way more than this, that were zeroed out in the original budget. Do we anticipate adding more positions throughout the year? Because obviously then that impacts the overall budget itself, what we were originally presented versus what we actually spent.
As it stands right now, this is where we are at with fixing positions. And then as it relates to the new positions that were added in, that were zeroed out, this is where we're at with them. I don't envision neighborhood services in particular, because I think they had quite a few of them in there. There being more of those coming in September or October, whenever we come back.
Okay. And then looking at that, Brian, if your office could maybe just, I don't know, send it over to council, just a look at what the budget would have been with these positions budgeted for a full year, just so we can kind of look and see how our budget would look if these positions were in it for the full year. Because I'm going to assume that these budgets will be needed to operate next year if we're operating at the same capacity. That way we kind of have a future outlook. I think that's the only question or comment I had. Were there any other questions, comments, or requests from my colleagues before we end this portion? Seeing none, thank you very much for this presentation and your detailed explanations.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right, and we will be moving on to Resolution 30 of 2022. Mr. Parker, would you mind reading that into record for us?
Madam Chair, is that a recommendation for a vote on next Tuesday?
I would like to put this on the agenda for a vote for next Tuesday. I would like for the treasurer's office to be here to kind of go over his other requests for his office, just in case, so we can ask him questions and understand that. But yes, I do recommend this. Thank you.
Resolution 30, 2022. A resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services agreement with Boyer and Ritter LLC to perform the city of Harrisburg's annual audit and financial report, DCED/CLGS/30, for the year ending December 31st, 2021, and an addendum to the professional services agreement related to completed 2020 audit.
And who from the administration do we have to go over this?
I think I'll stick around for this one as well.
All right. Thank you. If you could just give us an overview.
Sure. Again, as you know, Boyer and Ritter perform the city's annual audit. We're in the midst of a 3-year package with them. They've done the 2019, the 2020 audits. So recently we've received the engagement letter for the 2021 audit. The fee is identical to the prior year 2020 audit, which is approximately $116,000. So it's a professional services contract. Even though we have them, they've already been through the RFP process. It's the approach is to still do an engagement letter that's formal and specific to the year that's being audited.
All right.
That's for 2021. That's the first part of this resolution.
And then would you like to go over the second part as well so that we can then open it up for questions?
Do it that way.
Yes, that'd be a little easier.
Sure.
Thank you.
For 2020, again, 2019 was the first year of the 3-year agreement. And of course, that was the first year of Boyer and Ritter coming to us and us working with them. Typically, when you have the first year audit, there are cost overruns when it comes to anticipating your fee and how much time you put in. And again, that 2019 audit was tremendously affected by what happened in 2020 with the health environment and also the departure of the former finance director. And we achieved the audit in early 2021 for that. And then we moved to the 2020 audit for with the same approach. And we did better as far as issuance of that audit. That audit we managed to issue right at the very end of last year, which was it was an improvement upon 2019's audit. But during that time frame, in my office, and there were impacts from earlier in the year. In June of last year, we had the previous fiscal analyst had departed. We also finally filled the vacant staff accountant position, so that was a good offset. But at that point, normally when it gets to be June, I should be nearing the end of my audit preparation for the audit, which was not the case. Also, we had a new budget manager had come on staff. That was in April of 21, and she was, of course, new to the position. And didn't have, as you know, a finance director for the longest time, going back to the middle of 2020. Our former BA was present, but there was an impact there from his approach on being off-site at significant levels. So what this does to the audit process, as far as if I can have full time to concentrate on it, I feel comfortable I can achieve what the auditors are expecting, which is to have an adjusted trial balance ready for them, and also work papers that substantiate and support everything. And I wasn't able to produce that until closer to later in July and early August. But that affects the audit timeline. When the auditors are in, they like to be working steadily and progressing through the audit without any interruptions. And of course, we had that because there was various areas still incomplete, and I was still coming up with adjustments, reconciling adjustments to hand off to them for their review. So having gone through the 2019 audit, and it's expected that you have significant delays, but Boyer and Ritter didn't expect that, veering off the audit timeline for the 2020 audit. So they incurred additional hours. So they're requesting this time to, in addition to the fee for the 2020 audit, which again was $116,050, they're requesting an additional $17,500, which I believe the partner or principal from that firm, he provided an addendum document that explained that in his professional language. So that's an additional ask to finish up fee-wise the 2020 audit work. again, the audit is complete and the report has been issued, but this is a subsequent review of that firm's time and what came out of that extra work.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that detailed explanation.
Yes.
I know you and I kind of discussed this the other day, and you said that you were on track to avoid them needing to put in additional hours for this upcoming audit, correct?
It's better. There is an impact, and I can two parts here. The impact right now has been, again, working more on the budget side, as you've seen me more recently, with budget items. I am drifting away from that because Tim is more is digging in, he's more involved. And also, in communicating this with Marina, I'm trying to relieve myself of that. Also, you may be aware the city's consultant vendor, Tyler Technologies, we're on the road to implementing a new overall system, which incorporates the old mainframe and also the accounting system. We're trying to collapse everything into one overall system. There's been various training dates and presentations we've had recently. So I've discussed this with Matt Wilderson of Boyer and Ritter, and he suggested what I try to do this time is to develop a schedule where I can show progression on specific areas of the audit. And he would rather me, if we're going to be not as on point as we experienced last year, to at least complete areas of the audit fully. That way he can be more efficient in assigning those completed areas to his staff. So I won't derail him off of his schedule. I am through, I'd say right now, about at least 50 to 60% of the audit prep is completed. I've been working closely with the other firm that's helping us with audit prep assistance, Meyer Dussel. Currently, right now, they're also working on the city's police pension plan audit. So we're trying to work through that side audit as well. There have also been, I mentioned the previous fiscal analyst who departed last year. She did a lot with the pension filings that were due at the end of March. I've completed those. She also helped with the actual use report for the State Liquid Fuels Fund. She did that. I did that this time. That has been submitted and is complete. Also with DCED, the annual financial report has been completed now and filed for 2020. So we're actually up to date finally in a lot of audit financial reporting areas. And we also, those pension reportings are very critical. They need to be, they always take a priority because one of them in particular impacts the city's municipal state aid, which is certainly a big budget item. So in saying all that, I feel fairly comfortable about where I am. I wish I were further along, but there's still some items out in front of me, mainly the ongoing training with Tyler Technologies on the mainframe. The good news is they're hitting the financial piece of that first. So we have a few more, I think we have about 2 to 3 more dates of training coming up. So we'll be through that. So that's, I hope that is clear of a summary for you.
Yes, thank you. I'll open it up to my colleagues for any questions or comments. Seeing none. Thank you for giving us an explanation of this, and I would recommend this be put on the agenda for our next legislative session.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Bowers, thank you too.
Thank you, Vice President Green. That concludes the Budget and Finance Committee business. We'll move back up to the top of our agenda and we'll begin committee business with Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment Committee. Councilwoman Rawls.
Thank you, President Bowers. And good evening, everyone, again, and thank you for sticking it out with us. Lots of important things being discussed tonight. Mr. Parker, can you please read resolution 29 of, oh no, excuse me, we're going to start with our quarterly report. It was up there really nicely and I missed it. We're going to start with our quarterly report from the Bureau of Parks and Recreation. And can you please state your name and your position?
Good evening again, Council. My name is David Baker. I'm the Parks and Facilities Director for the City of Harrisburg. I am here to present our Parks and Recreation Quarterly Report. I feel pretty strongly everyone can decipher these slides for themselves, so I'm not going to read them verbatim, but we'll go over each in All right, so the first slide, we're focusing mostly on the public safety building. The project list is on the left, obviously, and then the budgeted amount or the actual amount is in the middle, and it states which one of those it is. And then the status of each project is over on the far right. One thing I want to note as we're going through these is typically we start with as many of these projects as we can right off the bat once they're approved by council. And the projects do take some time to get through the city's processes. So it's not that we're waiting till last minute, it just takes that much time. The next slide is for Reservoir Park. It shows the Reservoir Park specific projects that are underway right now. One of the things I'd like to note is we started this year doing phase 1 of the Chutes and Ladders project. We actually had a surplus of funds due to all the funding, and you can see the funding breakdown there. Due to extreme inflation and incredible construction costs, we're actually at a slight deficit right now, which we hope to remedy before the end of the project, or we will be forced to cut additional items that have already, we've already cut so far. So. So this would be more of a park specific. The $100,000 that we budgeted for the overarching master plan, basically for city parks. We are working currently with DCNR to see if we can't increase some of our funding there to maybe make that a little more of a effective plan throughout the entire city. And again, if you have any questions about any of these slides, particularly, please feel free to ask. Next is, again, these are more miscellaneous projects that most are right about to start after we receive bids for the projects. This year, it seems we've had to replace a pretty excessive amount of air conditioning systems throughout the buildings in the city. See that again on this slide. All right, so after doing the math, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we will be using 81% of our budget before the second quarter is over. And again, this is solely because of the length of time it takes to do the city's policy, to follow through with everything we need to as far as these larger scale projects. This wouldn't actually be budget, this will be the next. right, so do you have any questions in particular on the quarterly report?
I'm gonna hold the questions until you get through the report, and then I'll ask to see if council has any. You can continue.
So these items would be ARPA requests. And, they're kind of, in no great detail in here, but we do have much more detailed documents for each of these. And so that would conclude the quarterly report for budget for Parks and Rec.
You want to finish the packet? Well, I'll see if no, finish through it, and then I'll see if they have questions, because there are things in there about volunteers, so that may go into their questions.
Okay.
Let's do it all in one.
So here's a little information on some of the volunteer programs and some of the programs the city is offering. Harrisburg Young Professionals is a program that is new to me here at the city. DCNR offers this program and has for many years in other cities throughout the area. And from what I've learned of it, it is to teach young people job skills that are interested in careers more in nature, more hands-on careers, and obviously things that DCNR can offer to them. So we have a breakdown of the 4 days of what we'll be doing. The city will be partnering with multiple different individuals, and we will be trying to show the group of kids that DCNR has or will be bringing to us multiple different job skills. These kids will be paid by DCNR to do the work, and we've kind of come up jointly with as many items as we could think of that would be beneficial job skills for the kids while they're with us. And then below that, we have the Living Memorial Project that Ms. Mohammed is spearheading. That would take place in the lower front section of Reservoir Park, where we're working with many, many different individuals on that one too as well. And I do believe council has been given information on that in the past. So again, here are some of the larger volunteer groups that we've worked with so far this year. Obviously, the volunteer groups come out when it's warm. So we're in full swing right now. We have many more volunteer groups planned throughout the summer. And they're all different sizes. United Way Youth Day of Caring is probably one of the most fun volunteer groups that the city gets to deal with, because they'll bring out hundreds of kids to City Island, and it's amazing to see the amount that they can get done in such a short period of time because there's so many hands. So this is touching a little bit on the programming for Parks and Rec. We do have this stuff on our website, in the Parks and Rec website, and it is publicized. We also have many different flyers, and I did bring some with me if council would like any of them. But this is basically telling you when we're going to start our programming. So June 13th through August 5th. We'll be running the programming, and as I said earlier, the pool will open this Saturday. So we'll get to that slide a little bit later. So again, anyone with children ages 6 through 17, please feel free to utilize our services. And movie night has been a pretty big hit at Reservoir Park. Obviously, the more we have as far as attendance goes, the more resources I think we can probably put into it. But as of now, everything's going good. out there with that. We can have flyers for that as well. So here's a little specifics on Jackson Lake Pool. So Community Day, we will allow city residents in the pool for free. We will have a cap on the amount of individuals that are allowed in the pool at one time. As you can see from the slide, we are expecting a full complement of lifeguards depending on how testing and orientation goes. But we are hopeful that we will not have any sort of caps on the amount of people allowed in the pool, obviously other than just your regular fire codes. Right, and that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I will start to my far left to see if any of my council members have any questions. Councilman Rodriguez?
No questions, Chair Rawls. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. President Bowers?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question regarding the Harrisburg Youth Corps that you mentioned. I'm curious to know, I looked up, I wasn't familiar with the Student Conservation Association. And I was curious to know if any Harrisburg residents or any students from the Harrisburg School District either applied or will they participate in the program?
So we got all this information very last minute this year. I think we just got in under the deadline to actually participate in this program. And I do not believe that we have any students from Harrisburg in the program. I do know that there are some residents that will be working as chaperones or aides for the students. But I know that in the upcoming years, as long as everything is successful, that is going to be one of the goals, is to focus on more students in the area, that keeping it local here.
Okay, so all of the participants will be from somewhere else within the Commonwealth and they'll be here from July 5th through the 8th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to just add to that. I'm sorry for a little bit more background information. The reason they are coming is to show the youth in our city, as well as the parents, that the kids can do this. This is an up and coming thing. So they're coming to volunteer to show the community that this is something that we can have in Harrisburg, and just seeing how everyone feels about it when they come to volunteer, so that in the upcoming year, we get the ground running and it's ready to go next summer with a group from Harrisburg.
That's great. I think that's wonderful. I think you may already have some built-in interest from students that have previously participated with the Environmental Teen Corps. I see that the age group is really 18 to 25. That seems to be the target age range. So you may have some interest already. So that might be, maybe some of the alum from that program might be interested. My next questions are regarding outreach for the summer programs, the day programs and the evening programs. How have you conducted outreach for these? Have you received any responses? Do you know how many people are currently registered, considering they're scheduled to begin on Monday?
Yep. So the registration is not mandatory for the programs. So we prefer it. We'd love to have everyone register so we could really plan for everything. But you can drop in, you can drop your kids off without registering. So I can't give an exact number on that, but I can tell you, I wish we had more registers, just so we would, like I said, we'd know exactly what resources to put in what areas. We typically play it by ear. So that morning, whenever we see how many kids are showing up, we can move resources from one location to another if need be.
Okay. Okay. But how are you conducting the outreach to let people know about the programs? Are you just simply relying on social media, or were there other avenues that were explored.
Give these to council. So we actually have a decent amount of flyers. We have flyers for, movie night, learn to swim, tennis, lots of different programs that we're running. We do a lot of social media. Luckily, we seem to have a pretty in-depth communications department within this new administration, and they've also been very helpful in reaching out to individuals. And then we do talk to a lot of the community, just out and about in the parks, and let them know what's going on. Our park rangers have been outfitted with all the information necessary. We actually have a program we're working with the rangers now where they'll be interacting with the kids a lot more. They give away items for the kids. There's places they go where they see kids on a regular basis. At the basketball courts, they don't have a basketball. So we bought multiple different basketballs, footballs, you name it. And they go out there and they'll actually spend time with the kids, let them know what we're doing, and tell them the options. So we're kind of exploring every different avenue that we can think of as far as getting the word out for what we're offering this year.
Okay, that's great. I mean, they look like wonderful programs, including field trips. And I like the evening aspects for parents who may work later in the evenings. The movie nights sound like fun, and the tennis program. Is that something new this year?
Yeah, we've done that for many years. It's just, it's one of the many, many things we do. There's lots and lots of stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is that it, President Bowers? You're good? Okay. Vice President Green, do you have any questions?
I don't really have any questions. I would like to say thank you for the flyers. And just as far as outreach, I will say when I stopped past my house between work and coming here, there was actually a flyer on my door for the programming at the playground. I don't know if it's because I live across the street from a playground or if you're doing this citywide, but I was very encouraged to see that we're doing some of that grassroots, door to door, just letting people know what's going on. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate the evening aspects of some of the programming. And I look forward to seeing how things turn out. I know that it'll be a great summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Green. Councilman Madsen, do you have any questions?
Just to follow up on the communications piece. That is for a few different things. Any chance we can send it to the trash bill? That works a lot during the pandemic, but
Yeah, I think as long as we can, talk to the IT department and Steve is good with it, we can most likely do that.
okay, great. There's like a Spanish version as well. That was it for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Before we close out, would there be a chance that you could get an email to us with the, how many students are registered so far, how many camp counselors, and how many lifeguards, just so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. And
All right, so just for the record, we do really encourage the registration for all of these programs. And I guess we're hearing that some of these programs you do have to have registration. So especially if we're doing any sort of field trips or anything along those lines, we just, we don't want people just coming in for those alone, but we do have certain ones that you can walk in for. I'd recommend that if anyone has any questions, they contact our Parks and Rec department at the Reservoir Park mansion. They can come in person, they can go online, do emails, or they can call as well. So again, not to confuse anyone, but we definitely want to make sure that we don't upset anyone, that everyone's kid is having the best summer they can, and try and do as much registration as possible.
that's understandable. Do you think that maybe the camp leaders that are on the playground or at the tennis program could have paper registrations so that if a parent does come in and they weren't able to get to it online, they can fill it out and have the kiddos' information down?
So what we really try and do is have everyone come into the Reservoir Park Mansion to do registration. That way we can keep all the paperwork right there with the admin there, and nothing gets lost after it's been filled out or, filed incorrectly or anything along those lines. So if they come in if they're able to get to Reservoir Park, that's really where we try and get the registration complete.
Okay, I do agree with that, but if they come to the tennis, and they haven't registered online, they didn't go to the mansion, can we just have some paper copies, and then whoever is the head person can drop those copies off? Just so we're making it accessible for everybody.
The message I got, the last one says that even people that are dropped off have to register their child that day.
Right.
Like we're basically not taking an anonymous drop off of
Right.
a child.
Right.
We're taking
Right.
responsibility for them.
Right, that's what I mean. So like if they have some paper copies of the registration with them, they're able to just fill that out. Is that possible to get that done?
I'm sure we can work something out to
Okay.
get the accessibility out there.
All right, thank you so much, Director Baker. We're going to move on to Resolution 29 of 2022. Can you please read that for us? For us, Mr. Parker.
Resolution 29, 2022. A resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to award funding in an amount not to exceed $40,000 to the Capital Area Greenbelt Association for the performance of maintenance on city-owned land in the Capital Area Greenbelt.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Baker, you're still up. Can you please give us some background information on this and let us know what's happening?
Sure. So the Capital Area Greenbelt Association is a volunteer-based group that takes care of the Capital Area Greenbelt. They take care of many, many acres or miles of city-owned property. They use this funding for grant matching. They use it to remove invasive species, trail maintenance, you name it. So there's many, many things they do for the city that we are not physically able to do or financially able to do. And this money allows them to complete all those tasks.
Thank you. I'm gonna see if my colleagues have any questions. Councilman Rodriguez. President Bowers.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilman Madsen.
No questions for me.
And I just had one small question, probably more of a clarification. So the city of Harrisburg is giving this volunteer group the $40,000 to continue to rehabilitate and take care of the Greenbelt. Is that what?
That's correct. So
Okay.
they use the funding to do all the different things that I was speaking on earlier.
And there's a technical reason this is in front of you. In the budget, it allocated the $40,000, but it didn't say to who the recipient was. So they can't give the money to a recipient award without the council voting on the recipient. So if it had said in the budget, Greenbelt, which it did some years it didn't, then that award would have been a notice automatically going out the host money.
Okay, so this, right, it was already in the budget, but now it's coming before us, so we, it's clear who the money is going to. Okay, thank you. Well, that will be it. Director Baker, thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate your quarterly report and you giving us more information on Resolution 29 of 2022. I move that Resolution of 29, 2022 be placed on our agenda for our legislative meeting next session. And that concludes the business of the Parks and Recreation and Enrichment Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rawls. Next order of committee business is the Public Works Committee. Councilman Madsen.
Thank you, President Bowers. Mr. Parker, could you read Resolution 28 into the record?
Resolution 28, 2022. A resolution accepting the offer from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation in the amount of $1,100 in just compensation for the acquisition of 1,036 square feet of right-of-way at the corner of South 20th Street and Yates Alley for the I-83 widening project.
Thank you for that. And who will be presenting this on behalf of the administration?
Our office will take care of. This is really a technical resolution required in order for us to receive the funding. This is a right-of-way access for 83. There's been other ones in front of the council over the last few years. It's a tiny little sliver of land, but in order to finalize it, as opposed to going through an eminent domain process, we have to have a resolution that accepts the money. There's a much larger one coming in the months to come, but this is just a small little access to a right-of-way. So they're paying us, I think it's $1,100 for about 1,000 square feet of access to a right-of-way on a corner.
How did they get to that figure?
They, in their formula that they did, we did on a $700 one last year. They have a formula they do for the square footage. There's times they have to do it even if it's only temporary because they take it over and they dictate it. We have another one coming that's much closer to $250,000. That is a much larger piece of land.
This seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And it's really only before you because legally we can't accept the money without a resolution, and they can't give us the money without the resolution.
Good. So that go along and open it up to colleagues if they have any questions. Start with far left.
No questions for me. Thank you.
President Bowers,
No questions. Thank you.
Vice President Green,
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Rolls.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing that, we will move resolution 28 for a vote at our next legislature. What? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the business for the Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Councilman Madsen. Next up, we have the business of the Building and Housing Committee. I will preside in the absence of Councilman Majors. I'd like to invite Mr. Steve Bortner to join us to share a quarterly report on behalf of the Bureau of Information Technology.
Good evening. I don't have a PowerPoint tonight, so I'll just read from my notes. So I'm Steve Bortner, IT Director, and my update tonight is on the Operation Municipal Migration Project, which seems kind of exciting, right? The system that we're converting to from Tyler Technologies is called the Munis ERP system. It is a cloud-based system, so there will be no systems that live in our data center here in City Hall. The systems that we'll be converting are the 3 remaining mainframe systems, as well as the finance system that Brian mentioned and our payroll system. So all of that will be integrated within one system. We do have a steering committee for the project. We have 10 members on the committee represented by the administration, by City Council, with President Bowers, by the City Treasurer's Office and the City Controller's Office. In general, we meet every other week, but we have had to cancel a few meetings because of other Tyler meetings at the same time. And so far, we've had 8 meetings of that committee. We do have 4 other teams that encompass about 80 team members of city employees. So there'll be 80 plus people at one point or another working on the project. We officially kicked off the project on April the 28th with our planning meeting. That went very well. It was pretty much an all-day meeting. Yesterday, Tyler deployed our 4 environments, so we now have access to the system that we can start playing with and understanding how it works. The project's broken into 6 phases. The first one, finances, and we're scheduled to implement that in January of 2023. And that will eliminate the current finance system. And we do have 3 days of sessions this week to continue working through that. In October, we'll start on the human capital management phase as well as the tax billing and collections phase. The overall project plan is a 21-month project and will run through January of 2024. Most of the work that Tyler will be doing is remote, so that'll help keep the cost of the overall project down. The approved POs, we have 656,000. So far, we've spent 331,000 and have 325 remaining in the PO amounts that have been approved. And the bulk of the actual expenses are for the annual license fee that we have to pay every year. And we are tracking internal hours of city employees. So through last Friday, we've had 243 hours reported on the project. Some of the challenges with resources, trying to balance daily activities with project activities. Another one is making sure the accuracy of the data that gets converted into Munis, as well as making sure all the employees are properly trained and know how to use the system to do their daily jobs. And then some other things potentially we're looking at are a parking ticket solution within Munis, a trash container inventory system solution, and eventually convert the Steelton accounts that are currently administered in MuniLink. So they would all be housed within Munis as well, eliminate that annual expense. So that's where we're at today. Things are moving well. I think we're making good progress, and I'll entertain any questions you have.
Thank you very much for the update. I appreciate the work of the steering committee, and thank you for sharing the new completion date, because I think the last time we heard from you, our completion date was the end of 2023.
It was yes, that's
roughly,
correct,
right? Yes.
Mhm.
So now we've
We are
moved
moving things
to January of
For
2024.
finance.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Finances is 2023, and the overall completion is January of 2024.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Council members, do you have any questions for Mr. Bortner? Anything? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. Thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing. All right, at this time, we will open the floor for public comment. I will begin to my far right. Is there anyone in the far right section that would like to offer public comment? Just a reminder, please state your name and address. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your address, you can state the street vicinity that you live on. And some anonymous soul left a timer on my desk. I don't know if that's an indication. It was just here. I promise I didn't put it there. I arrived to it, but I don't even know how to. Let's see. Okay.
10 minutes. I'm gonna need
10 minutes. We have 2 minutes.
3.
2 and begin
All right.
now, please.
So first of all, my name is Lamont Jones. I'm a property owner in the 1600 block of Allison Hill, taxpayer, community advocate, amongst other things. First, I'd like to say to you guys that are newly elected, I know it's 6 months into your seats. I just want to congratulate all of you for your newly found positions, which brings me to say for my community about Bill 7. I was very pleased with the questions that council had today for those allotments of money that were proposed to be used in the city. But I would continue to encourage council to make sure they continue to ask the right questions. And I know that you guys know this, but I am inclined to say that you have been elected by the people of Harrisburg. So make sure that we continue to do the work and the will for the will of the people of Harrisburg. Ask the right questions. I think that some of that money could be used to our streets. I didn't hear anything about that in the proposed plan. Training some of our residents to fix some of these streets would be a good idea as well. You guys are also residents of the city, so you can also chime in on what this city needs. You guys have been out in the community, you work in the community, you know what we need. So don't, again, I just want to make sure that you continue to ask the right questions. There's one more thing. I had a whole lot that I wanted to say, and I apologize, but there's one more thing. Oh, about the dilapidated properties in the community, where I love the question that you asked about how did you come to see that these were to be knocked down? Once you don't get no definitive answers, just continue to dig and make sure you guys don't pass anything without continuing to work with this community. And I can say with some of those dilapidated properties, if there's squatters in there, why don't we turn some of them into some places where some of our homeless can live? We do have a huge problem with homelessness. in our community and look to encourage some of our children instead of looking for them for volunteering all the time. Use some of that money to pay some of our children, and it can taper down on some of the free time that they have and some of the crime that's going on in the community. And again, I would just encourage you guys to continue to ask the right questions. In the words of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, there can never be unity in the presence of distrust. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, the far right, that would like to offer public comment?
Guys, good evening. My name is Barry Murray, 1616 Harrisburg, PA. There's just a couple things that I want to say real quick. One is $1,100 is not enough for a right-of-way property, no matter how large it is. One thing I did for the last 15 years was pay the bills with PennDOT and assign the prices for those right-of-way properties. The least that I ever remember assigning was a $90 a month bill. But that's just that. I'd love to see that once a year, that once a week. I mean, that week where we were allowed to put all the junk out in the city for that to be picked up. I would love personally for that to happen again. And the last thing is I came and told y'all 2 weeks ago, and I want to remind y'all about this coming Saturday at 150 South 43rd Street in Harrisburg. If you're heading towards Walmart and you're at PetSmart and it's on your left, you want to make it right and head up the hill, but we're having an expo for youth 18 and under. It's free for them. We'll have 10 by 10 spaces. All they got to do is come set up, sell their product. If the adult has a business, the only stipulation we have is that your child or a child does the selling, and hopefully y'all have a contract together that they'll be collecting the money at the end. But if you have any questions about that, you can contact me at 717-877-6625.
Thank you. Anyone else on the far right? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Isha Mobley. I live at 2393 State Street in Harrisburg, which is actually the Pembroke area, but I service the homeless in this city. I have a satellite office right down the street from here where I service the folks. Two of my main concerns are low barrier shelters. We are in desperate need. We tend to open one up, the company I work for. I won't say the name, but we have winter shelters that we open over the winter, but we need that year round. We have a women's and non-binary, and a men's shelter overnight throughout the year so the folks can come in from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The other issue I have is there are no restrooms in the city. So our homeless, yes, they are defecating wherever they can because there are no restrooms, not enough. There should be some at the bus stops, like down there where the train station is where they're at. So we need more. So I just wanted to make sure we bring that up. I didn't see any line items regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Far right?
Hello, Kamika Campbell, Front Street, Harrisburg. I already know my house is at, but that's okay. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the People's Budget folks. And you know that we've been watching everything pretty closely for the last several months. So I just want to make sure we heard some of their concerns as well as, and I've been a part of that group for a while. So we wanted to get some clarification on how we designate who is a frontline worker and are more than just the police department getting $5,000 bonuses. So that's a question on the floor. Second, hold on. Additionally, we wanted to know more about the how to advocate for more home repair, funding towards home repair, because I think, and we think, not just myself, I don't want it to sound, it's just coming from Kamika Campbell, that $10,000 may be a low to medium allocation, and that we could possibly put some more of those funds, maybe $15,000 to $20,000, as folks look to repair their roofs, electrical systems, weather stripping, weatherizing their homes, and other things that could go into that allocation and to serve more folks. And then some of the other things that I was thinking about as I was listening was I actually don't think the pool is a terrible idea. However, I'm really interested in bolstering the pools. I'm really interested in how to fix some of the other problems that were brought up with the leaking into the drinking water, and does that take a third of the money, basically, of the allocation? And how can we look at that? And then let's see what else we got here. The collection of the taxes. So this was an interesting, or the refuse. So this was an interesting one because if we remember, this came up last year as well. So this came up last year where we discussed how, and we were very against it actually under the Appendix administration. Everyone was against it. Going after residents who are struggling in the city for this refuse money, while 70% of the monies were from people who lived not in the city. And that was a city council meeting that I attended along with several other folks. And we thought that was actually the city treasurer, I believe, that brought up that conversation. So I think if we're going to revisit that conversation about collecting this $15 million, I think at that time it was $15 million, we really need to make sure that we keep in mind that 70%, and that was a number that the city treasurer said at the time, from people who don't live here. So what they had proposed at the time was to try to collect primarily from the people who live in the city, who we already know are facing high levels of poverty. We already know the ALICE scores for Harrisburg City. We already know these things. So my recommendation would be to really concentrate on this, if we're going to build a partnership between the residents and the city, that's a meaningful one, not to treat every single person who owes on that bill the same, because they're not the same. A lot of people do not live in the city. 70%, that was the number, 70%. Those folks did not live here. So if we're not going to go after those folks and we're going to burden the folks who actually live in the city with trying to run them down for this money, let's have the same conversation we were having last year, where we were like, that's a bad idea because it was under PAP infused. It's a bad idea under any administration, under any council, to burden the people who actually live here, who are struggling, we know they are, and to collect from folks who don't live here. Last but not least, Juneteenth HBG is coming up. We have a week long of events. Please join us. We are starting with our kickoff at the Capitol on the 12th. This is powered by young professionals of color and over 40 different organizations in the city of Harrisburg and beyond. So join us for that. This really is a time of returning. Our motto this year is one city, one team, one economic impact. One city, one team, one economic impact. And we want to make sure that we bring several $100,000 of economic impact to the area. We've already done that with how our funding structure and what we've been doing. And we also want to present a united front to the region. This is the capital city, and it is important that we leave a legacy event for our city in the form of a comprehensive, amazing draw of a Juneteenth celebration, especially now that both the state and the federal government have made it a holiday. And we also would like to bring up, just drop in your ear, making this a city and county holiday as well, so that we can all enjoy and participate. Thank you, Kamiki Campbell, South Front Street.
Thank you for your comments. Just want to be mindful of the 2-minute time limit. Is there anyone else in the right section that would like to offer public comment?
Yes, hi, I'm Jasmine Scales, 1819 Holly Street. I'm from the Hill, 28 years. I just want to make sure that, we're holding the funds, we're holding accountable, the detailed explanation of the funds that are being used for nonprofit organizations, to make sure that we're using that to combat juvenile delinquency. Another thing is voter registration and education on the electoral process, because there's not enough education for that in the city. So I do see that, when there were questions asked about the nonprofits and the partnerships and where all that funding is going, there were no answers. So I want to make sure that we're applying pressure to make sure that those funds are being allocated properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the right that would like to offer public comment?
Soda 1339 South 18th.
just had a couple things. The vacant lots. You know, y'all could go after the people when they buy these lots and they just let all the trees look like a forest and woods. And closely from my house, I don't like that. You know, because I bet you if I was in Midtown or downtown, they ain't gonna let that happen. For 10, 15 years, I've been arguing with them to clean it up. Right, Mass Councilman Mason, right? He was there, he seen it, the lots. So I mean, you know, they keep saying the city code don't do jack. Like, but you know, I mean, then you want to hire someone else to go over the lots and everything. They have people to do that. It's called city codes. Do your job. That's what we pay y'all to do. Do your job. Go after the people that bought these lots and properties and left Harrisburg, and then you harass people that live in this city. Oh, your grass is up too high, I'm gonna fine you. But then you go across the street, look like a jungle here and a jungle there, and they don't go after them. Why is that? We don't need to hire another person to ride around full time by $80,000, $70,000, you know, to go say, oh, he got an empty lot, he got another empty lot. There's about 500 and something empty lots to be corrected. We can go look at it. You know, don't need a person for that. You have city code, that's their job. If they can't do the job, fire them. That's it. Put somebody in there gonna do the job. That's it. You know, even people that whoever cut the trees down and trim off the branches and stuff. I believe it's Parks and Recs in charge of that, they said. They said they were gonna cut these branches over there. Can you give me a minute or two, please? I appreciate that. You know, and they goes over there one day talking about move my RV. My RV is in my lot, in my yard. What the tree and the branches got to do with my RV there? They just ain't wanting to do the job.
Thank you for your comments,
You
Mr.
know,
Soto. If you'd
y'all
like
can
to
throw that-
speak on
but y'all should throw that
the
clock
codes
away.
department, if you'd like to speak on the codes department, I'd ask that you please speak to Councilman Rodriguez following the meeting.
I'm just saying that, yeah, unnecessary money wasting. It's my money. I pay taxes. I own property too and everything. And they want to hire people and give them all this money for what? Why? You can't even create a job in the city of Harrisburg. They got roads to fix up and stuff. They hire people outside of Harrisburg. You have people in here have a lot of talent and have the potential to work and want to work. And if you give them jobs, the youth and the teenagers and some young men and young ladies, I guarantee you won't have a lot of violence in the city of Harrisburg. But I don't know what I'm talking about. But y'all want to spend money for nothing.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the right that would like to offer public comment? Okay, seeing no one, anyone in the middle? Seeing no one, anyone on the left?
Missy, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Evelyn Hunt, and I live in the 1800 block of State Street. I'd like to take this time because I didn't see it on the agenda for new or upcoming activities. But first of all, I'd like to thank the residents of State Street and the surrounding areas for attending the meetings that the city arranged regarding the State Street project. Regarding the State Street project. But if we have another meeting before the 22nd of this month, I'm sure City Council will announce that there's going to be a third meeting. And this third meeting is to address what the citizens needed on State Street and what the city and the state will be saying they can give us. This meeting is going to be at Lincoln at 16th and State from 6 to 8 on June 22nd. I would like for all of the residents that live on State Street as well as those in the surrounding communities to attend this meeting and find out what we're going to be offered. I know City Council has been very generous with us when we speak at the end of the meetings. This meeting started at 5:30. It is now a little after 8:30. I don't like listening to City Council for approximately 3 hours and be told I have 2 minutes. I mean, I don't believe we should rant and rave and go on indefinitely, but 2 minutes sometimes just isn't enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evelyn. Is there anyone else on the left that would like to offer public comment? Seeing no one, I'd like to address the 2-minute time discussion. Thank you all for your patience. As you know, sometimes our work session meetings do go a little bit later than our legislative session meetings. Our legislative session meetings have been running about 45 minutes, maybe 48 minutes, and that is with public comment. The reason why I implemented the 2 minutes, and this is in our council rules that were adopted and discussed earlier this year, is to ensure that we remain timely so that you don't have to sit here all evening. We've asked that if there is a group that would like to offer public comment, they designate one person as a spokesperson to share their thoughts. The reason for the 2 minutes is because we would like to ensure that comments are concise and to the point, related to agenda items or other items that can be discussed after the meeting with council members related to our committees. So just wanted to note that and remind everyone of that time limit and why it's in place. And if we could all be mindful and respectful of it, I would appreciate it. If you have any thoughts or ideas on how we can ensure that the 2 minutes stands, please, I'm welcome any suggestions. The time is now 8:44 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
And I said,
Is there a second?
I wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm
real quick.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to say last week, my family and I had a scare at our house. Our alarms, our fire alarms, we didn't know what alarm was going off, but we thought it was our carbon monoxide alarm, which we know is odorless and colorless. So it just kept on going off, and I called 911, and the fire department showed up within, I would say, 2 minutes. They made us go outside. We stood outside. We had to wait. We were in our pajamas. My hair wasn't done. I mean, nevertheless, we felt horrible. But come to find out, we had old fire alarms. They were over 10 years old. We had no idea, and they were just they just kept going off. So not only did they come, they came and replaced all the fire alarms. So I just want to, give kudos where kudos is due to our Harrisburg Fire Department and thank them for coming out so quickly. And that's the second time they had to come to our house like that. We had a fire in the basement a little over a year ago. So thank you to the Harrisburg Fire Department. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I'm glad you and your family are safe. Okay, so now the time is 8:46. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.